Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
That was odd. I was having all kinds of technical difficulties. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and, well, it's, whatever. You know all the names. I say them in the day. Why say them all at night? I don't have to tell you who I am. Robert Meyer Burnett, and this is Robservations Midnighter. Episode 33. The Midnighter is as old as Jesus, which is kind of interesting. So, gotta say, now y'all know that The Midnighter is the show that you get to come on to. And I will be sending out that link for anybody who chooses to join me later. If you'd like to, you can. And how that works is if you've got a microphone and if you've got a good camera, I'm going to send out a link and you just go to it like you would any Zoom call and you can get on the Midnighter. Hopefully, by the way, use Google Chrome. That's what it seems to work with best. And we'll talk about it. This is the show you can come on, you can express your opinion. I respect yours. I hope you respect not only mine, but everyone else's in the chat. So, if you're going to come on, by the way, there's a delay. So don't come on and think you're going to show your junk or whatever you want to show. This is a respectful, adult place of ideas that are exchanged in a respectful manner. And speaking of that, here's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Gatekeeping. Fandom gatekeeping, of which I'm accused of on a daily basis. Now, what I find really interesting is that obviously those of you who've been coming to this channel, the Burnettwork's been around. It's been around for about 6 months longer than I've been doing Robservations. But I've been doing Robservations basically since December of 2018. And the entire philosophy behind this channel basically is to be a place where you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, our community, the Post-Geek singularity, can come and share your ideas, hopefully in a respectful manner, where you respect other fans, they respect you, and hopefully that's what we're all about. And what I find so interesting is I have tried to be as respectful as I can to most people. I do. I, however, find myself, and I understand you're on the internet, you can't expect people to be nice to you all the time. They're not going to do that. But what I would say that's interesting is I think that there has been a fundamental shift. I call it the Simpsons shift. And I believe it began to happen when Bart Simpson came onto when he was on the Tracy Ullman show as part of the Simpsons. That's kind of where I give Bart Simpson it's ground zero where a shift started to happen. When I was a kid, I respected all adults, even adults I didn't like. I respected them because, well, they'd lived longer than me, and I would just assume that in the longer space of time they'd been alive on the planet Earth, most adults knew more than I did. And that was something I just took for granted, and I thought that was a good way to live. And it was usually something that was bared out. I mean, I learned things. I knew I didn't know everything, and adults were an endless resource. And I had a lot of adult friends starting when I was about 13 because I would go out. I lived in Seattle. Actually, I lived on Mercer Island, but you could take buses into Seattle and Bellevue. And I would start at a young age. I was venturing out into the world, and I would go places. I had comic book stores in downtown Seattle I would go to. I had video stores in Seattle I would go to. And I met people predominantly that were much older than me, but they respected my quest and thirst for knowledge. And I became friends with a lot of them. I mean, nothing was untoward. Everybody was nice. I mean, a lot of them, it was mostly a film thing. The Seattle film community was very small, but everybody sort of knew everyone else. But what I loved was I learned from everyone. I learned what movies I hadn't seen yet and what I should see, and if they were playing at the Neptune Theater, which was our landmark theater that would show revival films, what movies did I have to see that I didn't know. I started going to the Seattle International Film Festival when I was 12, and I was seeing all kinds of films from all around the world. I was able to meet directors like Sam Raimi and Paul Verhoeven and Joe Dante and Fons Rodemaker, actually the Dutch director, and along with Paul Verhoeven. And it was the kind of thing where I knew that there was so much I had to learn from people that knew more than I did. And that was fun. And there was no shame in that. And when somebody would tell me they didn't like something, I would ask, well, why? What is it about this thing that you don't like, and why don't you like it? And that was another thing I'd learned from. I'd learned about critical acumen and people's biases and things that they did or didn't like. And my whole deal was I was a student of storytelling, the mechanics of storytelling. What is great storytelling? And I would like to think that I began my journey learning about great storytelling from watching things. I've told you, everybody on this channel knows this. The Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, Star Trek, and a lot of the movies I saw in Sci-Fi Theater on Channel 11 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sundays. And back then, I mean, there was obviously no internet. I'd find books, and I would go to the library, and I'd read up on movies and all these things that I didn't know about. But I had a thirst for knowledge. And sometimes you'd read movie reviews where somebody liked something that you didn't like, or you would like something that a reviewer disliked. But I didn't ever take anything personally. To me, it was all a learning experience. And I was learning from people that knew more than I did. I mean, I knew what I liked, and I knew what I didn't like. However, I always found it interesting when someone wrote like an astute review, whether it was Pauline Kael or Roger Ebert or some of the Richard Corliss, or just reviewers I read when I was a kid, and I would learn things about movies. And reading a Pauline Kael review or a Roger Ebert review, they knew a lot about other things other than movies, and they would bring that to bear in their reviews. And I learned things. I find what's very interesting on the internet today, and here's the thing. I always had an innate respect for people older than me that knew more things than I did. Now, the Simpsons shift, the Bart Simpson shift, I call it the Simpson shift. When Bart Simpson came on the scene, and there was, the Homer Simpson was an oaf. Bart was always pulling one over on him, and of course Lisa was the smartest girl in the family, and it was something that I always thought that was sort of odd, because when I grew up as a child of watching sitcoms in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, the kids were always the fuck-ups, and the parents would come in at the 11th hour and offer some wise pearls of wisdom and bail them out of whatever troubles they were having. And I guess I have friends, I've known their parents since I was a kid. Now their parents are in their 80s. To me, I can't call them anything but Mr. and Mrs. They're all like, no, Rob, call me, Sarah or Michael or John or whatever. I'm like, I can't do it, man. I can't. My parents taught me, no, when you shake hands with somebody, you look them straight in the eye. You shake their hand hard, and you always say Mr. and Mrs. when you go to a friend's house and you call their parents Mr. and Mrs. I still do that. I can't, I've been calling someone's parents Mr. and Mrs. since I was, in elementary school. I meet them now, and I'm happy they're around, and two, I'm like, Mr. So-and-so, I can't, it's very difficult for me to break free of that. Well, every day on the internet, somebody is accusing me, especially in Star Trek circles, of being a gatekeeper. But nobody, especially people that don't know me, it's always people that don't know me, or they come after me, or they jump into a thread. And they're the ones that call me gatekeeper, or it's always insulting. How many times I want to count how many times someone sends me. It happened today. Somebody sends me the Simpsons shot of old man yells at clouds, and now it's just gotten to the point where, wow, that's an original meme. Wow. And when somebody sends me that, I'm like, I'm respectful, I'm nice, but now it's gotten to the point where I'm like, really? What a wildly creative meme you're sending out. And I'm like, that is one of the things I hate about meme culture is it distills any kind of rational thought or any kind of discourse down into something that's inherently sort of glib. And what is that you gaining a point, or is it you allowing what it is? It's allowing someone else to have formulated a retort that you're using because you haven't been able to come up with one on your own. Now, admittedly, some people's meme foo is quite powerful. And I'm always sometimes amazed and delighted if they possess meme foo, but not many people do. Most of the memes that people send me are beyond tired. Why don't you create your own meme? I would love to see that. I mean, sometimes people know their memes, and it's great. But, I found a few articles I wanted to read tonight before I jump into this. This was an article from April 9th. Written by Lillian Durr, April 9th, 2021, and it was updated August 27th. This comes from The Standard, thestandard.org. I'm a fake fan and proud of it. The gatekeeping of fans in pop culture. When it comes to modern pop culture, few words more aptly describe it than fandom. It's possible that some people have interacted with fandoms before without knowing it. There are many mainstream fandoms, such as the Harry Potter fandom, which often refers to themselves as Potterheads, the Doctor Who fandom, nicknamed Whovians, and many more, which focus on media such as DC Comics, BBC's Sherlock, Supernatural, Star Kid Productions, and even sitcoms like Friends. The fact that this author doesn't lead off with Trekkies is telling. According to an article from the Grinnell College discussing subcultures in sociology, fan culture or fandom is a term which describes communities built around a shared enjoyment of an aspect of popular culture. What makes fandom so distinctive is the way in which fans act not only as a consumer of media, but also as creators. You don't have to go far online to see examples of this, from video edits and cosplay photos on Instagram pages dedicated to the owner's favorite character, to websites which host thousands of pieces of fan fiction. When it comes to fandoms, though, you also don't have to look far to find examples of gatekeeping. According to Jesse Earl, a writer and content creator for Pride, gatekeeping is placing arbitrary limits on what it means to be part of a group. Gatekeeping is present in nearly every fandom, but it appears especially prevalent in geek and nerd culture. It's prevalent, not did I say prevalent? Prevalent, pardon me. According to Swapna Krishna of Sci-Fi Wire, a science fiction, fantasy, and supernatural horror media online publication, an increase in gatekeeping within the Star Trek fandom occurred after the release of the TV show Star Trek Discovery. There's been a disturbing trend among the ranks of Star Trek fandom that has turned its back on the show, Krishna wrote. It's not enough that they don't like it. They've decreed that anyone who enjoys the show isn't a real Star Trek fan. Now, let me just say this. I've never said that. Many people who watch my show, I've railed on Discovery for years now, but I've also pointed out that Star Trek Discovery or Star Trek Picard or Lower Decks or Prodigy or Strange New Worlds, those shows are sometimes going to be the first time people encounter the franchise. And I don't begrudge them that. Hopefully, I think Star Trek speaks for itself. Star Trek doesn't need me to tell people what part of it's good or what part of it's bad. I believe it's self-evident. I believe that people now know less about what great storytelling is than, say, 30 or 40 years ago, because classical education exposed people to more stories. Now people have seen more media, but unfortunately, especially the younger generation, they haven't been exposed to, I would say, the best stories, because everything we've been getting for the last, well, let's say 20 years has been, for the most part, very derivative. Star Trek included. Star Trek is now an amalgamation of itself. And to really understand Star Trek, if you want to go back and really understand the essence of something, you have to go back and examine its origins. And to me, if you don't understand or haven't seen the original Star Trek series, the 1966 to 69 Star Trek series, especially now because they're strip mining all of it and they're updating it and changing what it is. So what you're getting is a counterfeit version of the characters, how they were originally conceived and the time in which they were conceived. Now, to me, that isn't gatekeeping. It's just that if you're going to understand what a character is supposed to be, you have to go back and see, well, when was that character created? How was that character created? Who created it? Why did they create it? And how did it exist within the time that it was created in? So here's the thing. If I don't like the portrayal of a character that I grew up with, especially for the most part, it was up until a point portrayed by the same actor. I find that to be, if I want to complain about modern iterations of the character, which the creators, rather than create their own character, they've taken a character previously existing, written by many different writers and overseen by many different creators, many different intellects. This character is now a new interpretation of what came before. But to me, it will never be genuine. It can't be, because it's a recreation of a previous character. Now, you can like that recreation, but I don't think you're necessarily being true to the essence of the actual artistic form that you're looking into. I mean, when you study art history, you can't just look at one painting and be like, I love that painting. I mean, you can. Loving that painting doesn't mean you're wrong. Of course you can love that painting. You can love anything you want. Don't let me tell you what you can and can't like. But I'll tell you something. A deeper understanding of trends in art history makes you have more of an appreciation of what you're looking at. And maybe look at what you initially liked with a more critical eye. And I think that can only be a good thing. Now, you might discover, after delving into the history of something, that you still love the thing that brought you into that in the first place. And there's nothing wrong with that. And don't let me tell you that there is something wrong with that, because there isn't. I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't like. I am not keeping you from liking anything. What I do think people need is more scholarship. I think they would get more out of their fandom. But anyway. Star Trek Discovery, going on in this article, received various backlash due to seeming continuity errors, as well as having what some believe to be an overly inclusive cast of characters. I saw a similar backlash occur after the release of Captain Marvel. While the movie had flaws in its storytelling, it seemed that the hate it received focused not on the writers and the story, but instead on the character and Brie Larson who played her. Although it is understandable to dislike a piece of media, it is alarming that often the source of that dislike in fandom culture is an irritation with diversity. If you enjoy that diversity as a female fan and are excited to see the inclusivity brought to your fandom, then often you are labeled as a fake fan by those who don't want that diversity. The idea of real versus fake fans comes up often in relation to fandom gatekeeping. Anytime I bring up liking Marvel or Marvel or X-Men to my male cousins, they always bombard me with trivia questions about it just to see if I'm really a fan, Carl Oldham, an undeclared freshman at Missouri State University, said. When it comes to theater, if you show any sign of preferring newer musicals and plays to the older, then you're immediately labeled as not actually being a proper fan of theater. I have experienced this many times myself. One memory that has stuck with me clearly is that of a boy I didn't know approaching me while I was wearing a sweatshirt emblazoned with the symbol of one of the Winter Soldier. Unprompted, he told me that I only like Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier because I must be attracted to the actor, before calling me a fake geek girl and walking away before I even had time to respond. As someone who spent their childhood reading comic books and watching every superhero movie and TV show I could get my hands on, I found this irritating to say the least. But what concerned me more than anything were the words fake geek girl. While many fans have experienced gatekeeping in fandoms regardless of gender, it is difficult to deny that femme fans face the brunt of fandom gatekeeping. Gatekeeping and the Femme Fan. Oldham suggested she thinks much of the gatekeeping she experiences is on the basis of gender. If you're a female fan in a male-dominated fandom, then they will do everything to try and make it seem that you don't know anything about fandom, Oldham said. In a 2012 blog post for Geek Out Blogs, a blog page associated with CNN Lifestyle, author Joe Peacock writes about several instances of gatekeeping specifically targeted at femme fans. There's a growing chorus of frustration in the geek community with, and there's no other way to put this, pretty girls pretending to be geeks for attention, Peacock said. San Diego Comic-Con is the largest vehicle, but it's hardly the only convention populated with hot chicks wearing skimpy outfits simply to get a bunch of gawking geeks' heads to turn just to satisfy their hollow egos. While Peacock does go on to clarify that he does believe not all female fans are taking interest in geek culture to draw attention from their male counterparts, a large portion of his blog post dismisses the legitimateness of women as fans of geek and nerd culture. This response to women in fandom strikes me as incredibly misogynistic, largely because Peacock seems to connect with how pretty he thinks a woman is to his idea of how legitimate of a fan they are. Rather than accepting that geek culture was finding its way to a new audience, something that certainly was happening in 2012 as the first Avengers movie was released, he suggests these female fans are seeking out conventions to receive attention. What's funny about that is everyone went to conventions to seek out attention. Everyone. I certainly did. I wanted to go talk to other fans. I wanted to get the attention of my fellow fans to talk about the things I loved, because when I was growing up, there was nobody else I could talk to about them. So, men, women, adults, children, we all go to conventions to seek out attention. It doesn't matter whether you're a girl or a boy or a man or a woman or a brother or a sister or a father or a grandparent. We all go to fans because whether we want personal attention or the attention of our own favorite things, we go to conventions to seek out attention. That's why they exist. That's the very reason that they're there. Now, I can tell you from the beginning, when I started going to conventions, there were very few women at these conventions, depending on which convention you would go to. And I always wanted that to be different. You know, when I first went to the San Diego Comic-Con back in 1988, I don't think that there were hardly any girls, because back then I'm rifling through the stacks of comics. And let's face it, how romantic or interesting is that really? Well, that's changed. That's changed because beginning in the late 80s, you had the comic book explosion. You had characters like Death that Neil Gaiman wrote, Emily the Strange. You had Invader Zim. You had all kinds of things that attracted female fans. Anime, video games, all of these things. I mean, fandom was completely changing. And it was bringing in all kinds of different fans. And it was beginning to go mainstream. It wasn't just a niche thing. I mean, now, of course, the reason I call my channel the Post-Geek, the home of the Post-Geek Singularity, is because everyone's a fan. It's all gone mainstream. So the idea that there are fake fans, no, they're just different kinds of fans. And if hot chicks want to dress up as Psylocke, I'm all for it. Why shouldn't they do that? Do they have to know the whole history of Betsy Braddock? I don't care. You know, do they have to know that she's the sister of Captain Britain? Who cares? Doesn't matter to me. Do they have to know, like, the entire Chris Claremont run of X-Men and which artist? I mean, whether it was Dave Cockrum, whether it was John Byrne, whether it was Jim Lee, does anybody have to know? Don't care. If somebody likes something, they like something. I'm not here to tell you that you shouldn't like something. What I am here to tell you is that I think the more you know about something, the deeper your enjoyment of that thing will be. And what I don't like is the incredible disrespect that is shown to people that dislike things. I never disliked somebody who disliked something. I wanted to learn why they didn't dislike it. Nobody ever asked me that. Well, why don't you like modern Star Trek, Rob? And I'm perfectly willing to give you an hour-long dissertation or point you to one of my many YouTube streams, which I go in depth and explain it. Now, what I find so interesting now is so many people get triggered by if you dislike something they like. To me, I like Star Trek. People will always say, well, you know, Rob, there was always bad episodes in Star Trek. Yeah, there was. My beloved original series has And the Children Shall Lead, which I think is not only one of the worst episodes of Star Trek I've ever seen, it's one of the most god-awful hours of television I've ever seen. Do I think the original series is lesser because of it? No. It's a terrible episode of the original series. There's a lot of episodes, I would say, that are not my favorite or aren't particularly good. Nothing wrong with that. But when people throw out an episode like Spock's Brain or The Way to Eden, which I will defend, by the way, or Plato's Stepchildren or And the Children Shall Lead as an indictment of Star Trek, I'm like, guys, Star Trek wouldn't exist without the original series. It wouldn't be around. The Star Trek, the original series, took hold in popular culture and the consciousness of the zeitgeist for whatever reason. And starting in 1972 and mostly throughout the entire 70s, Star Trek became a cultural force, especially in college campuses for people that were coming into their own. You can't deny that. And for people that go back and they dismiss Star Trek, I'm like, the original series, it's not because it's my favorite Star Trek series, but you're not thinking. You're just trying to denigrate what I'm saying to you by using, I don't know, some kind of a false argument. I don't have to defend the original series. History did it for me. So, I think that's something that we all have to think about. Now, this is actually it's a really long article, but I thought it's not that long. But, I, for one, am very happy that there's more female fans in fandom than ever before. I prefer having the female gaze, the female insight. I learn something. Women see things differently than men do. And I like that. I like seeing female creators coming more into the space. I grew up reading certain people like Chelsea Quinn Yarborough or James Tiptree Jr., that was a pen name, Anne McCaffrey, Vonda McIntyre, Yvonne Navarro. Vonda McIntyre, did I already say that? Ursula K. Le Guin. I always read Anne Rice. I always read female science fiction writers and female creators. Let's face it, Dorothy Fontana shaped the Vulcans for the original series, which resonates still to this day, although they can't write a Vulcan anymore to save their life. They don't seem to modern writers don't understand Vulcans. At least the people writing modern Star Trek, and that's one of the things I cannot stand about modern Star Trek. The Vulcans have been very, very underserved lately, especially since 2009. No one gets it, and it drives me insane. Vulcans have emotions. They just control them. There's a difference, and it drives me crazy. Anyway, what do you guys think? I want to know. I'm very curious. I'm going to see if anyone wants to come on the channel. What you want to say about fandom and gatekeeping and respect and scholarship and learning about what it is that you love before you condemn people who have criticisms of it. Anyway, the link is in the chat. And let's see who's coming in here tonight. Joey can't hear me. Joey, I love your backdrop, man. That is bad ass. That might be one of the great backdrops I think I've ever seen. Although you got to cover the whole. I know, I love it though. Did you make that yourself? Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. No, give me a second, guys. Hey, I before I change the camera lens, I'll put you in the chat, sir. I'll put you in the chat. Oh, and we also have the Funkalicious Zephyr Chan is here. God, well, this is gonna be a barn burner of a conversation. I'm looking forward to this one. Wow. Let's see, Joey, I got you in there. I'm putting you in coach. And we got our favorite Zephyr Chan here, the Funkalicious Zephyr Chan. Let me get you both in and change your names so people know who and what you are. All right. Okay, Zephyr, give me a minute. I'm putting you in. Man, I'm looking forward to this. All of a sudden, this late night show got really interesting. Well, hang on. You're not in the show yet. Hold on. Hold on. I haven't put you in yet. You're not in yet. Well, it was a great letter. It was a great letter. So, okay, hang on, Joey. Joey and Zephyr Chan, you're the first people tonight on this week's Midnighter. So, welcome to the show, lady and gent. First of all, let me ask you to tell everyone. First of all, Joey, where are you coming to us from?
I'm in Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York. And Zephyr, where are you coming to us from?
San Francisco.
I left my heart there once. So let me ask you, Joey, what do you think about gatekeeping and fandom?
Well, yeah, I want to start. I really like this topic because when I saw it, I don't really think about it much, but once you started the show and I started kind of, letting it resonate in my mind, I was like, this is a great conversation. I think it's kind of multi-level. I think that, I first wanted to tell you that I think that I've watched you for a number of years and you are, super eloquent with when you have something you don't like. I've never even watched Star Trek, but when you talk about it, you explain very clearly why you don't like it. The new series since '09, why you don't like it. You give your reasons. You're very clear and concise. So to me, that's not really gatekeeping. I'm somebody who kind of came from many different backgrounds. Like my parents, my dad wasn't into any like geek culture type things. My mom, not really much. I always had kind of a natural, tendency towards liking fantasy, science fiction more so. So I always was somebody who wanted more people, to talk to about it. So
Me too.
whenever like if Star Wars was on, I'd always want my dad to be watching it. It would bother me like that my brother was sort of into it a little bit and then he kind of moved out of it. So for me it was like you want more people. So the concept I didn't really get.
I'm
But
with you 100%.
with my dad, he was into sports, less watching, more playing sports, but I've noticed a lot of parallels with, sports fandom and what you're talking about. It's not quite the same, but there is this there's a disrespect for like knowledge and authority, and you don't want to be too like snooty about this, but if you listen to like a talk show, like a sports talk show, you've got people who have been doing it 30, 40 years. They've been talking about sports, and I'm in Buffalo, so we've got the Bills here. It's a small town. There's people who've literally been watching it their entire lives, and now they have these jobs where it's their job to talk about it 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then they watch the games and they talk about the games. And the people will call in and they'll be like, oh, you guys don't know anything about football, or they'll want them to reaffirm their own thoughts. So they're like, oh, didn't the quarterback play great? And they're like, no, I don't think so. Oh, you're so
Oh
negative.
yeah, I see the parallel between sports and geek culture now because a lot of people on both things, they like to feel validated and affirmed.
Exactly, yeah. So they would call into to these professionals, and they're saying, hey, don't you guys think that our quarterback's awesome? And they're like, he's all right, and then they'll just unleash their wrath at them. So it's a strange thing. So and that was just something that I noticed, and I'm sure there's other parallels that we can go into on that. But I guess I don't know if I'd say a critique, but I have some questions for you about that. I'll save them for a little bit later, but
Yeah, hold on. Hold that thought for a second because I want to ask Zephyr. I'm like, look, you're getting a PhD in a very specific area of Buddhism.
Yes.
Now, I would ask you, there must be a lot of Buddhist scholars and they must all have different opinions.
Yes, that's true.
Are there people that critique, like in academia, I know that there's a lot of dissenting views. Has anyone ever said to you that you just don't know enough about Buddhism, or are there people that try and police or gatekeep you in terms of your area of study?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, because my area of study, Tiantai Buddhist, which is Tiantai Buddhism, is actually a fairly small community as it is, because not a lot of people are actually into the study of Tiantai Buddhism. More so when it comes to the Japanese form, which is Tendai, because Tendai is actually a lot bigger. You know, it's actually one of the few big Buddhist sects in Japan, Tendai. But then in China, it's more the bigger schools of Buddhism are actually Pure Land and Zen or Chan. Those are the two biggest ones. Tiantai is actually
So, is
quite,
there a rivalry between Chinese and Japanese Buddhist studiers, people who are studying these forms?
well, a lot of Buddhist study scholars are actually Japanese. Like the Japanese people have written a lot on Buddhist studies in Japanese. So Japanese is actually a Buddhist studies language.
So, would there ever be Japanese that would tell you, Zephyr, that you just don't? We've studied this far longer than you Chinese people have, so you should really accept our viewpoint.
Well, no, because they're a lot too polite for that. Japanese people don't, they're not like that.
Well, that makes sense. Well, so Joey, you said you wanted to bring up some things.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a very scatterbrained person, so I try to write down some of this so there's some semblance of
It's fantastic.
cohesiveness to it.
This show is nothing if not scatterbrained, so it's okay.
Well, as you were talking, I'm thinking
And
like,
like you, I like to learn. So, any critique I take all critique as a learning experience.
Yes.
well, that's I mean, that's one of the things.
Because we're born, we're not born experts, right? We're
Right.
not born knowing everything. So, yeah.
I think there's a part of fandom because, as you mentioned, culturally, people are less inclined to, to want to better themselves and learn. It seems sometimes, but it's interesting because there is so much knowledge right at our fingertips with the internet. Like that's how I said I had kind of an interesting childhood because I wasn't discouraged from from looking into Hanna-Barbera cartoons or having an interest for that, but it was just something that I was like, oh, I saw the Boomerang Network. I don't know if you remember Boomerang.
Yeah.
Like a
Oh
cartoon
yeah,
that was
I know Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
yeah. Well,
They
saw
they
them.
existed in Hong Kong.
I saw them when I was little, and then I got all into like the history of that, and I have all this. I've learned all this stuff because of the internet, because I grew up right around that time. Where you're just on Wikipedia all the time, and you're just wasting hours diving into this hole. But it kind of created an appreciation and understanding for.
You're a young one, aren't you, Joey?
I'm in mid-20s, so.
But
But I
no-
was like,
Oh, you're 10.
Oh yeah, because
so
Zephyr,
young.
you're ancient.
32.
So, but Joey, let me ask you something. I mean, one of the things that I love about the internet is, to me, you can spend you keystrokes, you can do exploration, you can look at things, find things out. I mean, I've always, if I was a kid, as a Star Trek fan, we didn't. If I had Memory Alpha, which is a website where you can go and find out.
It is the Star Trek wiki, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible, and to have that. But I had to have my reference books and things like that, and that's what I loved. And
well, yeah. I mean, what was it like when you were like, holy crap, like there's so many people, who are into this? Because I think I talked to you one other time and you said that,
yeah,
Star Wars was just for you when you saw it. It was like, oh, this is my thing. And then it's like, oh my God, there's all these people. And then with the internet, it's even more. It's like there's millions of people talking about this all the time.
well, I'll tell you what's really interesting. When Star Wars came out, I was 10, and I was already just a huge science fiction, horror, fantasy fanatic.
Yeah,
It was-
because you read Dune when you were really young.
I read Dune after Star Wars. Star Wars was.
okay.
I read Dune 2 years later. I read it when I was in the 6th grade. But the funny thing about Star Wars was, no one had ever seen anything remotely similar to it at all. And for me, I was already a Star Trek fan, a Twilight Zone fan,
Yeah.
UFO, The Prisoner, Outer Limits, you name it, all the show, the Time Tunnel, Village of the Giant, or Land of the Giants. There was Village of the Giants was a movie. I was already a fanatical science fiction film fan and television and whatever. But Star Wars, no one had ever seen anything in cinema history that presented that sort of lived-in, used... I always talk about verisimilitude on my show. No one had ever seen a science fiction movie with that kind of verisimilitude. You know, I always tell people the scene where the Jawas come to the Lars farm and Owen Lars and Luke come out to buy droids. And, you know, you see the base of the Sandcrawler and you've got all the droids lined up and R5-D4 gets bought and the motivator blows. And when you're looking at this, it looks real. Like you're watching this, you're in a sci-fi milieu on a desert planet with these droids, and everything you look at was real. There had never been a science fiction movie or anything that
And
looked...
this was way before David Lynch's Dune, right?
Yeah, way before. Dune was very much an inspiration for Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars was completely mind-blowing to people who were seeing it.
Yeah, and so when I was seeing it for the first time, even as a 10-year-old, I'd seen just about every science fiction movie I could... That was there was no home video. That was broadcast on TV. And there was nothing that made me feel like I was outside in a real place, in a real environment, watching real people interact with Jawas, because what the hell were they? Like, what do they look like under those cloaks? I don't fucking know. But they're selling these droids, which was like, they were dirty, but they worked, and they had their own... They could talk, like C-3PO understood what R2-D2 was saying. You know, it was so from a storytelling standpoint, Star Wars, as far as science fiction and fantasy cinema go, was so mind-blowing. It was such a paradigm shift in the pop culture imagination, which is people don't even think about it now because Star Wars has been around for, 44 years. So it's
well, this is kind of what's interesting to me because unlike unlike a lot of things that I could think of in a second, there's a question of like objectivity or subjectivity. If this was an objective thing, like how a measurement of something, if you're a mechanic or something, most people would naturally be like, oh, Rob, he's been a mechanic for 50 years. He understands what's wrong with the car here. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, I know. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But with this, it's interesting because, I'm somebody, and like let's say my dad might see the original Star Wars and then the Rise of Skywalker, the one that just came out, and be like, oh, the new one was so much better, and he wouldn't have as eloquent of reasons as you, but you would be able to explain verisimilitude, for example, and it's interesting because there's like, as he being by you saying like, oh well, in the original, everything had an explanation or a purpose that made sense. Like you always complain about, oh, these big ships would never be in the atmosphere like this. That's not, and then it's like, oh, is he being snooty? Or to me, it's like, oh my god, that's such a good point. When I'm watching it as a kid, you're just like, oh, lightsabers, this is so fun. When you get older, it's like, you can't always put your finger on like why is this not impacting me when you're seeing these Palpatine in the new film, all these starfighters just rising out of the water, and you're like, this should be a big cool thing, but something's just off. And then when you talk about, well, here's why, because this doesn't make any sense. You're just seeing something that the director thought would be a cool image, but it has no weight to it. And it's like, yes, that...
Or it doesn't make any narrative sense, for instance.
Yeah, narrative, it doesn't have any semblance of science or reality.
Or it contradicts past lore, for instance.
Yeah, but I would also...
And that's another point that we'll go into.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, Zephyr. Like, you obviously, you went and saw the the Dune event at IMAX. You went and saw it. Now, one of the things to me that is attractive about all of Denis Villeneuve's science fiction, whether it was Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and what appears to be Dune, is he takes great pains to create things that have verisimilitude. It looks like the way the ships move, and the way people move, and the way the sand, the way the spice glistens in the wind on Arrakis.
The thing is, for Dune, at least for the sand scenes in Dune, I do believe it was shot on location in a desert.
Yes,
so
it was.
So that added to the verisimilitude.
Yeah, but I mean, did you feel a reality to what you were watching?
Yeah.
See, and I think that
because shooting on location is there is a verisimilitude to shooting on location.
Star Wars had that same thing. I mean, when they went to Tunisia to shoot the scenes on Tatooine, and we know that. The thing is, human beings know what it's like to live in the real world. So when we see something shot on location, even though it's supposed to be a desert planet, we know. Like, I'll give you an example about where Star Wars started to go wrong for me.
Okay.
It was at the very beginning of Return of the Jedi, where we see a matte painting of Jabba's palace, and we have R2-D2 and C-3PO going up to Jabba's palace, and there's a scene when they walk up. It's a close-up of the door that they walk into, and there's a like a droid greeter that comes out, a thing that's, goodness gracious me, and they're tapping on the door. None of that felt authentic. The lighting didn't look right, and you could tell that giant door was on a set. And I watched that, and I'm like, I no longer believe, like they could have just gone to Tunisia and shot that. They could have built that set as a flat with the real sunlight shining against it, but they didn't. And so when I was looking at that door, and then suddenly when that thing comes out of the wall and starts talking they're asking to come in, and when you see the Gamorrean guards they look like cartoon characters. And even the way that the saliva is on there and the growling, the way it's shot, it wasn't real. It didn't feel real anymore. And it's not because they were all Muppets, but that was part of it. Even the design of the Gamorrean guards did not convince me the way the design work in Star Wars and Empire convinced me. And I think that's where Star Wars started to go off the rails.
I don't quite agree with the guards. I don't know. Maybe if I thought about it more, there might be some truth to that. But what I will say is that going off that point, but keeping it connecting to gatekeeping, I think that same logic applies to characters. Because we know, you know people. We know these characters like we know our friends. Like I know, how this character would act in a given situation.
Mm-hmm.
So when they act contrary to that, either in the same movie or in a sequel years later, you're like, that he wouldn't say that.
Yep.
And so I'm going to give an example of The Last Jedi. I don't hear this about The Last Jedi much. I'm not going to talk about Luke. I don't think Yoda sounded right in The Last Jedi. When he was talking to Luke, I was like, this feels like someone is trying to write a wise character, but he doesn't sound authentic. And it was like, he was like, oh, failure is the greatest teacher. I was like, that's kind of a generic, that's what would be a wise thing to say here. And when he was talking, I didn't feel like the impact. When you go, and then I went back and you watch, Empire, and you're like, oh, wow, it's so authentic and it's so true to that character. So, to me, like that moment, we've been talking about technical things at this point, like the design.
No, but you're spot on here, and it's not just technical things. I think character more than anything is what breaks canon, and you are 100% right. I mean, I'll give you an example with Yoda. When Luke first meets Yoda on Dagobah, Luke's like, I'm looking for a great warrior, and Yoda's like, oh, wars not make one great. Like he's tossing out this where you stop and you go, wait a minute, what? This little rodent creature, because you haven't learned who he is yet. You just think he's some denizen of the swamp on Dagobah. When he throws out a line like "Wars not make one great," suddenly you as an audience member, not knowing who Yoda is, I suddenly went, wait a minute. This isn't some like swamp rat on Dagobah. This guy knows what's up. And that was how they drew you in. And one of the great reveals of the Star Wars saga is when Yoda finally says, I cannot teach him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Not only does he say that, but even like the puppet's demeanor changes, and it's like
yep.
it's so good.
And
It's
you
so good
realize
how they achieved that.
it was a test. You know, the whole thing was a test. Luke was being tested, and Ben Kenobi and Yoda were watching him the whole time, and he failed.
But yes, and even on a technical level, like you said, like they knew that the puppet couldn't have the same facial expression when he drops the act and he turns into the stoic Jedi Master. You know, he looks different, and he turns to Luke, and it's like he's like Yoda, and it's like yeah, and that's one of the reasons. Like a lot of people talk about, you know, like, oh, you're mad that Luke's acting different because you want him to act this way, and you're mad that he's not. It's like there's a different layer of this. It's not just I wanted him to be this heroic character. It's that I don't believe that he would all of a sudden act this way, and they didn't convince me that he would act this way. They said, oh, one bad thing happened to him, so he's this quitting guy who goes and hides on an island, and like I don't. It's not just like I'm mad that he's doing this. It's I don't follow the logic.
Dude.
It's out of character for him to do so.
Yeah, Joey,
Yes.
you fucking nailed it, man. That is exactly correct. And I think that whether people can articulate that or not, I think everybody understands it, whether they want to believe. I think the one thing about Star Wars and Star Trek is
Also,
people give it a pass.
Speaking about Luke, he's also one of, if not the most optimistic character in Star Wars.
For sure, yeah.
Luke.
And you could tell a story where he loses that, but the problem is a lot of people believe what we think. They're not good at articulating it, and then what happens is the conversation is dominated by people who are saying like, "Oh, you're just mad that they didn't do what you wanted to do. You think you're some like elite fan." And it's that if you like when that movie came out, the overwhelming consensus was, "Oh, it's just a bunch of man babies who are angry." And I wasn't angry when I saw it, but I saw like these angry people, and I didn't just laugh at them. I was like, what are they saying? And I ended up getting to that point where I was like, I think I know what they're trying to say. They're letting their anger, you know, take over their point, and it's overcoming them to the point where all the people are hearing is these raged, you know, people. And some people were more measured, but it's tough. Like you don't want to be labeled as like, oh, I'm angry man baby. So you have to be careful with like how you do it, and this is why I think it's weird that you'd be called the gatekeeper, because every time, maybe because it's Twitter, because you have to say everything in bytes, but when you're on this platform, you're very like, here's what I don't like about it, you know, here's why I like the original version, here's what they're not doing that they used to do. I don't think if you could watch any of your videos and not be able to follow that. As I said, I never even watched the series, but I fully understand what you mean. I don't know that I would agree with you if I were to watch all the way through the pantheon of Star Trek. But
oh no, you would. You would.
I can fully say, if someone said, "Why does Rob not like Star Trek since '09?" I would say, "Well, here's why," and I would lay out all the reasons.
But I think I think you really just articulated, you know, in a very short, concise, direct way what I would spend 2 hours trying to articulate. And
I had notes.
I mean, I think that was and to me, what I find strange is I used to think that was self-evident about storytelling. Like I only because, you know, I grew up, I didn't just like science fiction, fantasy, and horror movies. I liked all stories. You know, I watched a lot of Asian science fiction, and I watched a lot of foreign films, non-English language movies. And
you're a super astute, you know, viewer.
I mean, storytelling, you know, great storytelling, it all comes back to our experience of the real world. Like even Star Wars. The reason that Star Wars, the verisimilitude of it worked is because I know what it would have been like to stand in the middle of a desert. I mean, not quite Tatooine, but when you see that scene where the Jawas roll up, the Jawas roll up and they have their droids out and they come to look at which droids to buy, we know that, they're really outside. You know, and if somebody's going to try and sell me something, this seems real. Like, and our experience of the real world, and like you said, I have friends, you have friends, and you know how they're going to act. You know how they're going to act in certain situations.
Which is why, like, yes, if someone who I thought was my friend came up to me, who looked just like my friend, but was saying things that just didn't match up with them, I'd be like, something's wrong here. You're probably like some AI robot, and you just know. Especially, and that's how these characters are. Like, we watch them since we're little. We know how they've been acting, and then when it's contrary to that, it's like something's not driving here. And I said, like, if you said what is Yoda saying in the Last Jedi that's so bad, I wouldn't be like, oh well, this line is so horrible. It's just like you can just feel when something's a little bit off, and it is. And I gave like one line that I thought was a little generic, that you could probably go back and go, well, this line in Empire was generic too, but it's like, I don't know, something about how it feels to me. It just, and I found a few people that agree with that. I certainly don't think a single line in that movie resonated the same way that the lines in Empire do.
Oh, and
I would like to ask a question.
Please.
Do you think, when it comes to the more modern Star Wars, as well as the more modern Star Trek, especially, do you think the modern writers have lost or don't know how to write nuanced characters? Do you think that's part of what is lost?
I think that's true 100% of the time. And I think Yoda is a perfect example that our now pop culture understanding of Yoda from a cursory glance is that he espouses philosophy. He has these funny things to say, but Yoda also
backwards.
Yeah, that's it. But Yoda also is funny. He has a sense of humor.
Yes,
He's somebody that's wise. He's a military strategist. He is a warrior. He has all of those things. And yet the problem with modern writing is it always wants to be distilled down to something simple. And I think that a line of dialogue,
when you do that, nuance is lost.
Well, yes.
And a lot of it is also like referring back to itself and just shrinking into this, like shell of itself. And, that's like you said, Yoda has to reference a thing that he did in the other movie. So he's gonna say similar lines. He's going to act the exact same way as he acted in Empire, or they're going to try as much as they can to get him back to that. And they do this, with everything. And I even think that, let me see one of the things that this reminded me of is with like the nuance. There's also this weird thing with in society, like things are becoming mainstream that have been around a long time, but people think they're a lot more new than they are. Like, for example, the Joker film, right? Anyone who saw Taxi Driver or
right.
The King of Comedy is like, this is just that with the Joker costume. But people are like, oh my God, this is so mind blowing. But it was literally, and it was a pretty good movie. Like, I'm not. No,
I'm with, but I couldn't agree with you more.
Literally, like shot for shot, and it wasn't pretending not to be. Like, they had Robert De Niro in it, but it was so similar that it was like, what's the nuance here? The nuance was Batman. That was it. It was that it was in the Gotham universe, which works. It was a good film, but there isn't that astute. Like if every single person had seen those two movies, they would be like, what is this? This is literally you just took two movies and you put the Joker in it. And that's not every movie, but that's just, to me, is an example of something that Hollywood is doing nowadays.
But that was, I have to say, pointing that out, as somebody who grew up with King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, both from Martin Scorsese, and watching Joker, it's impossible to not. I mean, I've seen both of those movies dozens of times over the years, and when I watched Joker, I felt Joker was a ripoff.
And not in the way that like Star Wars was a ripoff of the old, samurai in the serials. It wasn't like an homage, like, oh, I see where they're pulling.
It was or a pastiche.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a straight up, I'm stealing this, and I'm repackaging it, and while, look, it made $1 billion, but But the thing that bothers me, I think what bothers me about the modern age, and it bothers me because in a way, I am snobbish and elitist, in the sense that when I was a kid, in the wake of Star Wars, and I've told this story before, but there was a book that came out called Sci-Fi Now by a guy named Alan Frank, and it had Close Encounters and Star Wars and 2001. I actually have it right over there. And it was a pictorial history of the science fiction film, but it had a lot of horror. It had fantasy films in it from the dawn of cinema to 1978.
Oh, wow.
And when I read this book, I thought to myself...
Question, was Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera part of that?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so when I read this book, I thought to myself in 1978, I'm like, I'm going to see every movie in this book. Every single one. And when I read the book, I didn't care whether it was black and white, because in my mind, cinema was in black and white up until a point, and then even into the 50s. You know, one of my favorite movies of all time was black and white, 1950s Best Picture, All About Eve. So I never, like, to me, as a kid, I never thought to myself, I'm not going to not watch a movie because it's black and white. Frankenstein, Dracula. When I was a kid, Twilight Zone was black and white. I loved all that shit. And I never once... Yeah, I mean, why would you... To me, I'm like, it never occurred to me not to watch something that was older, because it was like, okay, there wasn't even color film in the early 30s when King Kong or Frankenstein was made. So to like, I just assumed, I'm like, okay, they're black and white, they're fine. Even when you went back to like Abel Gantz's Napoleon, when that was made, a silent film, it was tinted in different colors. So to me, it was always like just what it was. Nowadays, I literally have people on my show tell me, I'm not going to watch a black and white movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It blows me away.
To my dad's credit, you know, we grew up with Twilight Zone and Stooges, Three Stooges, both black and white, and that kind of sets in your brain, like, okay, this is how it used to be, and it's perfectly fine. I refuse to watch, like, if they colorize the Stooges, you know, not watching it. I prefer to black and white. So, and also, like, when you get into King Kong, if you're one of the kids that watch when you're little, learning how they make it is so interesting. It's like, and then when you're watching it from that perspective, like the old, the original, well, not original, but Frankenstein of 1931, it's like, oh, how do they do the makeup? Oh, it's the costume was, how do they make that look real back then? Oh, people were super scared of this back then, and now it doesn't really play the same way.
Oh, speaking of old people who were being scared, Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera. I heard that.
Is that the one that was lost?
I heard that women actually fainted when Lon Chaney did his reveal.
Yeah, the London After Midnight was a movie that was lost, but
so that wasn't the one that was lost. Phantom of the Opera.
No,
okay.
I think
but Lon Chaney was in that one.
Yeah,
yes.
Lon Chaney was in.
He did his own makeup. Right?
He did his own makeup.
So Zephyr, let me ask you this. I mean, you grew up in Hong Kong, right?
Yes.
So in Hong Kong, when you were a kid growing up, what were some of the things that you watched? What were some of your touchstones? Like, were you watching movies or anime or Chinese soap operas?
I wasn't really watching a lot of Chinese. I wasn't really watching a lot of Cantonese language shows because, strangely enough, English is my first language. So,
wow. So did you watch American television?
Yes.
British TV?
More American than British, I think. I mean, the only Cantonese language show that I watched that my mother, think that I didn't watch, that I watched the English language dub, but I didn't. I actually watched the original Cantonese. Was TVB's adaptation of Journey to the West.
I've got some questions I would love to ask you. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. So,
sure.
Comic Quirks with Jimmy sends in a super chat and says, Gatekeeping is good. Anyone is welcome in geekdom, but we gatekeep people who want to change things because they don't like the past. Geek, however, is our culture.
Well, it's interesting. Like, okay, so there's a certain degree, like you just have to give on some things. Like you were saying, you can't expect every fan is going to want to go back and dive into the pantheon of film history. It's it can be frustrating. Like when people are like, "Do you like the movie?" No, and then you find out they're watching it like on their phone while walking around, and it's like, how could you have even experienced it to the point where you even know you like it? You missed lines because you weren't paying attention, and you have to just like, okay, people don't take this as seriously as I do. Let it go. And then there's like but sometimes there's little things that that can get frustrating. Like, here's an example, and I want to know what you think about this. I think this is a problem that I have, but I don't know. So I'm a fairly big fan of the character of Batman. I never really read a lot of comics, but weirdly, like, I have pretty decent knowledge of like comic history, but through like watching film, animated series, a tiny bit of comics, I understand, like, okay, this is this character, this is how this is. I understand what he does, why he acts the way he acts. The Tim Burton Batman movies are revered nowadays. Like, they're Michael Keaton's consistently like in the top 2 is the best Batman. Those films are off. People are like,
Tim
oh,
Burton's Batman. Who played Batman in that?
Michael Keaton.
Okay,
So
right.
we're talking
That's
about
Michael Keaton
yeah,
ones.
Batman 89 and 92 is Batman Returns, and a lot of people are like, oh, then it gets terrible with Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I think they're all roughly like, okay, Batman Robin's a little worse. I saw that when it was the first Batman movie I ever saw, so I have a weird relationship with that movie. But when you go back and watch those movies, if you pay attention to the dialogue, it is no more like, it's less sophisticated. It is no more dark and serious than the '60s Batman. The Penguin's running for mayor. He's in this like mini Batmobile and he's controlling it. The dialogue, the story doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. The characters act out of character. It doesn't really have a resolution. The climax of '89 makes no sense. Batman really doesn't do any detective work. He just kind of lumbers around. I don't think that character is he's kills and he seems to enjoy it. I don't think that character is in any way consistent with the comic book, but it's like you almost feel like, are people being like hoodwinked by this? Because you love, the visuals are so impressive. It's the best Batmobile there ever was. It's the best, Batwing. The set design is amazing. Anton Furst, whole universe he created. Batman Returns is like one of my favorite scores of all time.
Oh yeah.
So it's like I have this weird relationship where I feel like I should be like defending it, but instead I'm like, whoa, like why is this being propped up with like The Dark Knight, which is on a storytelling level is so much superior, more sophisticated. It makes sense. It's been thought out more. And the Burton films, much like a lot of Burton films, are just like stuff is happening and it's weird and it's crazy. I don't think it holds together. So I'm like, am I like being elitist by saying, oh, that's not the character Batman? People are being fooled by it, because then you seem like who are you to say that? A lot of people are like, well, this is this director's interpretation of the character. You shouldn't be telling people not to like it or telling people that this isn't the right character. So it's a weird thought I've had. Like, you almost feel like this.
I have so much to say about this, but I would ask you, Zephyr, have you seen Tim Burton's 2 Batman movies, Batman and Batman Returns?
The Michael Keaton Batman, yes, but not recently.
Oh, I did. I even have a picture on my Instagram. I went to the world premiere of Batman. And I have to tell you, I was so disappointed in Tim Burton's Batman. For all the reasons you eloquently stated, Joey, Tim Burton, to me, has the soul of an animator. And one of the things... what's that? Yeah, he did. He was an animator. He did a brilliant movie called Vincent, another brilliant movie called Frankenweenie, which is actually a live-action film. But he has the soul of an animator. And one of the things about Tim Burton's career, for me personally, is that when his soul, that of an animator, collides with a piece of material like Ed Wood or Pee-wee's Big Adventure or Edward Scissorhands, you get a great film. Mm-hmm. Batman, to me, was not a great movie. As a matter of fact, I saw it.
Because Batman did not mesh with his with Tim Burton's animator sensibilities.
I think that nothing meshes.
I think it's a lot like, on some level, it's like Zack Snyder. Like, I don't think he understands. I don't think he gets the character. Like, you can even, if you watch some of the interviews he was doing, like he's describing what the character is to him. And I don't think that is, meshing. And I guess when I say like who's Batman, I think most people who are like real fans, like I'm not saying real, like big fans of Batman, would point to the animated series, which isn't like, the Batman animated series, which isn't like my favorite, interpretation. But I think that's a very good, like, here's what how the character.
Yes.
This. So even though it's not my favorite,
I love Adam West's portrayal of Batman.
In a certain way, he's the best Batman too. Yeah. A totally different interpretation, but like.
It's definitely a lot less. Adam West's portrayal of Batman is definitely a lot less dark.
Yeah, well, I think that series works on the level it is meant to be. It was, people say it's campy. It's like, it was meant to be campy. It was meant to be funny, and it was.
Well, it was because they actually, I think even Adam West admitted as such that he knew that it was campy, and he knew it was campy, but then he was completely self-aware about that.
The shark repellent is supposed to be a joke. It's not like it was ironically funny. Like, it was hilarious. Like all the
about in the movie where he was trying to get rid of the bomb, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think what's interesting about the Batman series is that within the universe that the 66 Batman series takes place in, it works because the whole world is campy. Mm-hmm. Like everything is campy.
Batman wasn't quite a pop culture icon at the time. So this was actually what got Batman into the pop culture icon, becoming like a this figure everybody knows. So back then, Batman hadn't really evolved to the point where, he is how he is today. Like, that was also, not only was that, did it work, but it was also a pretty good interpretation of what Batman was at the time. Like, it was less serious. It took itself less seriously. Batman wore the silly costume. He had his ward, Robin. It was a silly thing.
But within that world, Batman was still good at what he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He
was a detective.
Yeah, they were the dynamic duo, and Batman would be like, "Well, Robin," and he would.
Right.
He solved the problem, and he did it through intellect, and he was never a buffoon.
Detective skills.
He wasn't.
Detective skills.
Yeah,
and I think that's
like you said. Like, he always had a gadget for everything. Even though they're funny gadgets, but that character is consistent to who he is, even though it's not serious. And that was one of the problems. I'm sorry.
No, and I think, but what you're pointing out, see, to me, it's funny because I don't. This is how I think about what we're discussing now, is how I think about most things in terms of the franchises that I love. And I've tried to articulate to people that when people say, yes, the Batman animated series is the Batman 66 series is campy, but internally, if you assume, I'll tell you something, Free Guy, I don't know if you've seen Free Guy, but Free Guy that's in the theaters now, it works in kind of the same way. Because if you believe that a sandbox video game like a Grand Theft Auto or a Red Dead Redemption or Ghost of Tsushima or whatever, if they really existed, and you're in that kind of a world, then there's an internal consistency in Free Guy that works.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I'm being rude.
Well, I was just going to say that Free Guy, it takes this idea, and we're self-aware, so we understand what's going on, so we know what we're looking at. But if you really look at Free Guy, there's kind of an internal consistency to the Ryan Reynolds character. I mean, obviously, he's a human being. He's playing he's not a digitized character. You see human beings in this computer world, which is kind of weird, but it's okay. You buy into it. But the same reason Free Guy works is the same reason the Batman 66 TV series works, if that makes any sense.
I
And,
no, totally agree.
Totally, I agree.
and it's a
And
hard
it
thing to
sort of
explain to
frustrates
people.
me. Well, it sort of frustrates me when people are like, "Oh, it was campy," and it's like, it's fine if you don't, if that's not your thing. Like totally, like of course it is what it is. But
Yep.
I just wish more people were like, it's almost like saying, "Oh, the Three Stooges are campy." It's like
It's supposed
it's a
to be.
comedy. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it is what it achieved exactly what it was seeking out to do, and it was very effective at it. Now
And
to
besides,
take
I
it,
like the cat women. I like the several different cat women in the 66 Batman.
yes,
Oh yeah.
Eartha Kitt, Julie Newmar, and I always Lee Merriweather. Is that
Yeah.
his name?
Yes. Who was also in Star
So
Trek.
to take yeah, I wouldn't know that, but I'm assuming there's a lot of crossover between, or at least a little bit of like the minor
There
characters.
are. There's
I
a
know Shatner was Two-Face in the new
in the animated show. Yeah.
because Two-Face was never in that series. It was funny they brought him in. But to take it to like '92, so this is Batman Returns. A lot of people, when you say like, why is Michael Keaton the best or one of the best Batman, they'll talk, oh, it's so dark, his voice, and this isn't everybody, but there's a superficial element to it. It's like, oh, it's dark. It was, this was how it was supposed to be, and a lot of people complain about Christian Bale's voice, which to a degree you can criticize. It's silly. It's silly when he's doing it, even if there's a logic in the movie of why he's doing it. When he's doing it to people who know he's Bruce Wayne's weird, it doesn't. It's not really intimidating. It comes across as kind of goofy.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a moment, like in Batman Returns, he's fighting Catwoman, and he hits her, and she's like, "How could you? I'm a woman," and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry," and it was like, that was the most, like he's stuttering and he's apologizing to her, like, and then she gets the upper hand on him because he stutters and gets confused and he's apologizing. It's like, to me that is so much worse than any moment in the newer the Nolan trilogy, because this is like a fundamental like misunderstanding of this character, uh, as is a lot of like the movie where he's lumbering around. Not he doesn't really solve much. He's just kind of reacting to things.
Yeah.
uh, if you watch, some other people point a lot of this out, but like the Batmobile's always running away from people. He's just waiting for the Joker to do something, and then he shows up and fights him. And usually he's losing, and then like he gets something, some other thing gets in the way and gives him the upper hand. He's killing people, but it's not like it's more like killing people in the way the director doesn't really think about it, rather than it's not like a plot point that he's killing people. It's just like, oh, he's in the second movie. There's a scene where the guy's like, he's like, go ahead and hit me, and then he puts an explosive on him and like pushes him in to this pit, and he's like smiling about it. So to me it's weird because after the documentary Val came out about Val Kilmer, who played Bruce Wayne in Batman Forever, I went back and watched that movie, which was always like, oh, it's so bad. I think that movie's far.
Which is the Batman with Jack Nicholson?
That's
89.
Burton's
He
first.
played the
That's his
Joker.
first Batman. Batman
Okay.
'89.
So Val Kilmer played Batman in Forever, and that is with Jim Carrey,
Tommy Lee
Lee
Jones and
Val
Nicole
Kilmer,
Kidman.
and Nicole Kidman, she's a terrible character in that movie, but everything that movie works on a storytelling level on a far, the Bruce Wayne character makes so much more sense. It's not a great movie, but if you follow like how the character's acting, his relationship with the other characters, for the most part, it's like, this is a better movie than those other two, even though in a weird way, like I prefer those two because I grew up with them, and the score and the the look, and that's why it's so interesting that look, score, and whole idea was kind of transferred in animated form, and that is what's, to a lot of people, is like the definitive Batman. So the movie had so much working on a technical level, but I just think that it's weird that I feel like I'm being elitist, but it's like, it's almost like, are people being bamboozled by this movie because it looks and feels so right, and yet when you really like sit and let it marinate, you're like, this doesn't work.
Well, I think you've certainly nailed my hatred of modern Star Trek. But it's true. I know, Zephyr, you've heard me say this so much, but in terms of, to me, astute viewers of storytelling understand this. But I think most people, are are not necessarily astute viewers. They don't have to be. And it's not for me to say what people like or don't like, but I do think there is a proper way to tell a story and a less proper way to tell a story. And it's like when you read a book and you know somebody who, an author really knows how to wield language. And it's something we can all really recognize. And look, I read a lot of, by the way, Zephyr sent me a book called The Quantum Spy that I'm in the middle of that's really, by the way, it's really good. I'm really interested to see where it goes. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff in it. I'm like,
I have it right here.
How true is this book? But it seems, yeah, it's really good. I'm really enjoying it a lot. So thank you for sending it to me. But
you should have thanked me for sending it to her. For me sending it to you. You should actually thank Louis Tan.
Oh, well, I know, because so you're in love with the actor Louis Tan, and he's going to play the character. Is it a series they're making?
Yes, a television series.
Yeah, well, it's going to be good. But what I find interesting, Joey, is what you are touching upon is exactly what I've spent my life believing in. And it's very difficult to quantify that for people, but you've certainly done a good job of doing it. And
that's the tough thing, isn't it? Like if you've talked about, like, what if perhaps there is an objective truth to why some stories resonate and some don't, and why some some stories have been passed down. Why did the Bible resonate with so many people, whereas other fables and stories didn't, whether they were true or metaphorically or literally true, and because we don't have a way of measuring it, or there is no objectivity, or it is truly a subjective thing, and that makes it so hard because I could go in, someone who's never watched Star Trek, and I could watch an episode of Discovery and tell you I loved it, it's so amazing, and you would be like, oh no, here's why I don't like it, and I'd be like, no, that who are you to tell me not to like it, or who are you to tell me that's better? I think this is better than that. So it's weird because you can sound very snooty, you can sound very elitist, you can sound very like a gatekeeper, but it's weird because people put stock in authority more than they do in your argument or in like your years of knowledge. Like I said, if you were,
but what makes an authority an authority?
Well,
because you said that people put stock in authority. So
if Rob was a sports broadcaster or had a radio show, and he had been watching sports, the NFL is an example, it's big in America, every single person, he's been watching football for 50 years. He's studied players, he's studied every single player, he knows all these stats, he can just rattle off information.
Well, he's that for Star Trek.
But then there's this guy who played, he played in the league for a few years. He knows a lot about football, but he played offensive line. So he's got a lot of expertise on offensive line. He doesn't know the history of quarterbacks. He doesn't know the history of football. If he were on with Rob, a lot of people would just immediately gravitate to the guy who was in the league because they would say, oh, he's an authority. This guy played in the league. This Rob guy doesn't know anything. He's just this guy who talks about football. He doesn't know anything. I want to talk to the guy who played football. And obviously, like, Rob, to some degree, would be an authority on film because he directed films that were played in theaters, actual Hollywood movies. But, to someone who's watching you who doesn't know that, who doesn't know your name and is just seeing a post, they're going to take it as a lesser authority. Whereas if Steven Spielberg, who everybody knows, just said, Discovery's amazing, they'd say, oh, I'm going to listen to the guy who's, I'm going to listen to this guy over you. I'm not going to listen to you. Where you could lay out this entire argument, but for a lot of people, they don't want to hear it. They would just go to authority.
Well, I think also we can't forget that people watch things at different levels. Like, to me, Star Trek is real. It might as well be a documentary. At least it is in my own imagination. Most people aren't like that. Most people are like, it's just a TV show. I'm just going to watch it. I'll be diverted, for a couple of... It's to me, though, and what's hard to explain is that, to me, it all comes down... it always comes down to the classical structure of storytelling. The idea of what and all storytelling in my mind begins with you conveying human truth. The whole reason that we tell stories to one another, and we have since we probably climbed down from the trees, is we needed to be able to convey, like, if like, say you have a tribe, you're in a tribe of apes, right? And you all have to leave for the day to go find food. And someone shows up late. And this poor ape is like bleeding from his shoulder, and he doesn't have anything to show, and he's hungry. And his tribe's like, yo, man, I mean, come on, man. I mean, we've all gone out and done our thing. You come back, you're bleeding. Why should we give you any food? Well, that ape's got to tell a story to his tribe and say, well, here's what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And it's been how we've been conveying the experience of the world to each other since the dawn, since we could communicate with each other verbally or through pictures or whatever. Now, as we've evolved, and we now use storytelling, we now have fiction. We now tell stories about not what just happened to us, but we've made up stories. They still are rooted in the basic truths of existence and the basic truths of what it means to live every day. Even in science fiction, at the end of the day, we might I love science fiction because I love the trappings of it. I love, the extrapolations of what might it be like to be a human being 1,000 years in the future. Or when we have such technology undreamed of, when we can, whatever. I mean, but even that.
Even like strip down things like the Twilight Zone. Like, what would happen if there was a nuclear bomb going off and you had a bomb shelter? And
you're in a bank vault. Or, a bank, people. Yeah, exactly.
We're picking up two of them, yeah.
And that, whether it's the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, actually, there's a lot of that theme. Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, The Shelter, Time Enough at Last. There were a number of different Twilight Zones that dealt with those themes, and I think that to me, I don't care, and this is what I can't stand. I cannot stand when someone says, "Well, you just don't like Star Trek because now there's a black woman at the lead," and I'm like, no, I don't care. I don't care at all about that. But you've got to write that character to be truthful, honest, and make me believe that character deserves to be where she is. And
yes, because at the end of the day, Star Trek is still quasi-military, right?
Sure.
There is some sort of military discipline involved.
And they've written Star Trek that the universe literally it has become her story. And at the core of Star Trek, if you really think about it, as it was conceived, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, as it wound up being, the id, the ego, the superego, was really about human interaction and cooperation to surmount problems. And that was the idea, that ultimately that you needed a group of people. In Star Trek Discovery, it's about one person solving all of the problems in the universe, which in my mind is antithetical to what Star Trek actually is about. And that has been lost. The writers have like, oh no, we're going to have a very strong, powerful black woman. And I'm like, well, that's great in theory, but what you're writing is untruthful. Because you are not writing what Star Trek is about, nor what human experience is about. Instead, you are writing a progressive agenda in light of a story. And I think that you're doing a disservice to your character by writing Michael Burnham. I mean, Sonequa Martin Green's a great actress. She's also a very beautiful woman. I don't care what color she is. She's a beautiful woman. So, in my mind, she's never, after 3 years, been given a story that's been worth revisiting. And that's the problem with modern Star Trek.
Sorry. This is why I think this is kind of a multi-leveled discussion, because, again, we're going to bring it, I'm sure, to Rey in Star Wars. So one of the problems is that we have a very, we have a bite-sized, tweets. We've got these. We have tiny little baby attention spans. Nobody's even like nobody's going to sit and watch however long this discussion is going to be to get to the root of this problem. They will be seeing your tweet that Ray's Mary Sue, and they'll get very upset about that. And then there's the people who, there is like people who are sexist, who are like, who don't want
Sure.
any women.
Which is
leading it.
also
And-
problematic because there are
but I'm
racist,
saying-
sexist people.
I'm saying the discussion has been so clouded now, where
Yeah.
nobody really even knows where this is from. And then I saw an interview with Daisy Ridley where she was saying, "Oh, Ray's not a Mary Sue," and her answer was fundamentally didn't understand what a Mary Sue was. She was like, "Oh, I'm not." The character's not like, "Oh, I'm the strongest. I'm going to go do this." What a Mary Sue means is that you have a character who is kind of skipping the hero's journey, and they're already capable at all the things that they're supposed to learn. And this is not only used with women. Like a lot of people have talked about, Dom and the Fast and Furious is just the greatest of everything. There are many most like narcissists.
Well,
who
Mary
cast them-
Sue's are characters who basically don't have flaws, right?
don't have flaws yet, or are generally very competent at everything they do. When you see like a narcissist make a movie where they cast themselves as an action star, they will be Mary Sue in that film.
Yeah.
So with Ray, the thing is, again, it all comes back to verisimilitude and believability. Do you believe that this character is a real character, or does it just feel like Disney wanted to make a strong, capable female, new action star to be the lead of the Star Wars film? And we don't know the root of it. Like, we don't know if Kathleen Kennedy said, "I want a strong female character," or if that was just who they thought would be the good character for the role, and that's what happened. But regardless of what the reason was, what we have is a character who was instantly the best at flying the Millennium Falcon, got herself out of every situation she got into. She was beating people up right away with no training. She used the Obi-Wan, who was the Master Jedi. She used the mind trick that only Obi-Wan could use in the first Star Wars movie. She just, like that, had it. She gets captured by Kylo Ren, but of course she escapes.
The only training she was shown to undertake was in the final movie, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
and that
we're
was
talking about,
that was only for a little bit.
Yeah, and we're talking about Force Awakens. Like in the first film, she's catching the lightsaber. She beats Kylo Ren. I know that people are like, "Oh, he was injured," but I've listed like 8 things that Han Solo looks at her one part like, "Oh, I guess you're just the best at flying this Millennium Falcon that I've been flying for."
Even though
100
that
years.
was the first time that she ever even saw the Millennium Falcon. Right?
Yeah,
Literally,
and that's
yes, literally. So, and they occasionally have this very passing line of dialogue like, "Oh, I used to do this" or whatever. But again, like, let's look back at Luke. People are like, "Oh, Luke was really good too." No, in the first Star Wars movie, Luke fails basically the whole way through, and he has to constantly be rescued by Obi-Wan. He's rescued by Han Solo. He finally, in the last scene, turns off his computer. But even then, he needed Han Solo to come up and help him out. And he's not like this loser character. Like he is. He became a hero for the characters in the movie, but also the fans of him. But there was that process. So when you see him, I know you don't like Return of the Jedi, but when you see him in Return of the Jedi, now it's like, oh, now he's kind of like this master Jedi.
well. I mean, I think Return of the Jedi is 2 great scenes. The opening.
There's certain through lines that work, right? Like Luke's character works generally.
Yeah, of course. I just
think
think
the stuff on Endor, in Han Solo's character, like there's more problematic stuff there. But I think like the Luke and Vader relationship you can take from the first movie to the last movie, like this is consistent. So my point is, by the time you get to the end of that trilogy, that character you've been through on this journey and you understand him now, and you have this fully rounded character. Now we look at Rey. They did the first movie and everyone's complaining she's Mary Sue. Now, this is one of the weird things that I've been noticing in film lately is there are lines and plot points that seem like the director are literally reading tweets and they are explaining it away in the movie. Like remember the Holdo maneuver in the second movie? They're like, "Oh, we should do the Holdo maneuver." No, that can't be. That's 1 in a million. They had a line where Rey, everyone's like, what is Rey's, parent going to be? And then Ryan Johnson's like, it doesn't even matter. We're going to make it that. It's going to be a big surprise. But then they're like, no, that wasn't cool enough. Let's make it Palpatine because we've got to have that big reveal. Everybody on Twitter wants a big reveal. We've got to have something. So they're doing, and this is not just, this isn't just to make a strong female character. They're doing things to make people surprised and shocked that are just pulled out of nowhere. They're not following the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. They're just doing things that they think are going to be surprising and shocking. And ultimately what we have is this character who's just lost by the end of it. When she says, I'm Rey Skywalker, that didn't mean anything to anybody.
No, where did that even come from?
At least if she said Palpatine, it'd be like, oh, she's keeping her name and she's kind of taking ownership of it. There's something. But she says Skywalker, and people are just like, what? No, you're not. So this, and I think, it's no surprise that who are the two faces of Star Wars right now? It is Baby Yoda and The Mandalorian, because that show has had far more of a pop culture iconic characters than anything from the sequel trilogy, because the characters ultimately didn't resonate. They had something with Rey, with Finn. They had an idea of he was this stormtrooper who turned on them. What do you do with that? It's just like, that's all we got.
Nothing.
Going to kind of be there. They'll just be there for the next two movies. Poe was like this. He seemed to have a good energy to him in the first movie, and then it was just like the second movie he's a buffoon. In the third movie, we got to have like a team together. But again, it's like, why are they together? They don't seem to get along. But they didn't have they didn't have a reason to be butting heads. Besides, they just needed to have that, like, got to have the big three characters meeting and like having each other.
I think what you're describing, I think the real problem is no one is a student of storytelling anymore. Even the people that are making movies and television, they've only ever seen movies and television. And the thing is, stories are ultimately literary forms. Even the pictographs that we were painting on cave walls required a certain understanding, a certain methodology to understand the stories that were being told.
Yep.
And I think the real problem is that stories as a literary form, no one's reading anymore. And I know a lot of friends of mine that I think are great writers and all that, but I'm like, look, to me, I've said this on Star Trek, it is apparent to me, with few exceptions like Kirsten Beyer, the people that are writing Star Trek and the people that are writing Star Wars, J.J. Abrams, they've read fuck all science fiction novels. Mm-hmm. And so the very genre, which is a literary genre they're working in, they do not understand the very form that they are working in. And it's very apparent in terms of looking at how they're telling those stories. Because, what's interesting is that even George Lucas, who was hugely inspired by Akira Kurosawa, people go, look, he was using wipes from the Hidden Fortress. But he's also the whole idea of Bushido and the whole idea of, like, Lucas was an academic and he was a documentarian and he delved into these things. Now, I don't think he was a very hip human being. Like, if you took George Lucas to a club when he was 18 or 20 years old, I think he would have stood in the corner and twiddled his thumbs and not known what to do. He was not going to walk up and go, hi, to a pretty girl.
Oh, that's Lucas. Me. That is so me.
Yeah, but it's true. He wasn't that guy. But
so was I. I'm not comfortable in clubs.
Well, yeah, and of course, but my point is though that his writing reflects that. Even American Graffiti, which is a great film, he was towed. He understood that. He was writing from his experience. But I think that nowadays the problem is you have two problems. No one has a literary background in storytelling. They haven't read the classics. They don't know what's going on. They've only watched media. And two, they believe all writing has to be this formulaic. It's a bastardization of Sid Field and Brett Snyder, his book Save the Cat. And so they're doing both things. And what's happened is they're all writers today, and so am I, we're all playing video games. And we're all playing story-based video games where cut scenes are there's no character nuance. I mean, sometimes the characters are cool, but you're literally watching cutscenes to get to the next gameplay. So all of the storytelling has been truncated. Like, no, in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek '09, there's no distance to be traveled in space. We get to where we have to be. Hyperspeed jumping or skipping. There's no and so there's no understanding that J.J. Abrams is like, look, traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy. Like in Star Wars, it takes time. And with J.J. Abrams, it's like, no, you can be instant. In Star Trek and Star Wars, in the J.J. Abrams world, you can be anywhere where you need to go.
So it's like teleportation, basically.
Well, and they did that in Star Trek Into Darkness. We don't need to have Khan. I mean, who cares how he gets to the Klingon homeworld? He'll beam from his one-man ship to the Klingon homeworld, even though that makes absolutely no sense in the Star Trek universe. The technology doesn't exist. The idea that you have to program your landing coordinates, you don't know where the fuck you're landing, but that you can even do that. That's why I hate this J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie so much, is because they're unimaginative, and they don't even consider at all the reality
Physics.
of the universe they live in. They
Like
they don't care. They don't care.
They don't understand physics.
At the root of it, though, like what let's bring it back to the new Star Wars trilogy. Like, what is it about? What is the story about? Because especially the last movie, what it really is it's just a series of MacGuffins. Like, we need to get the thing, and then we need to get the other thing, and then. But it's like, what is the story that you're trying to tell? Like, what are we trying to get? Like, what are these characters supposed to be learning and growing? What happens is, because the plot is just let's get the thing, then the other thing. What the character's growth is just whatever it has to be to get to the end. Like, Kylo Ren has to turn, and he has to turn quickly because we only have one scene. So we need to have Harrison Ford come back, and then he's just back. Now he's good. Rey has to forgive him instantly, and then they'll fight Palpatine together. Like, that's what happens with these.
So it's like a movie version of a video game.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it was.
I've heard cutscene.
It's like when you put all the cutscenes in a video game together. It's like a video game, but without the play.
And that's what I call. I mean, I Fast 9. I even like the Fast and Furious franchise. I fucking hated Fast 9. I hate.
I don't know. How did
Is it because it's too silly? Like, they somehow attach rockets to a car, and that somehow managed to escape Earth's gravity?
Have you guys not seen the other ones? Like, I didn't see the new one. I saw the 7th movie because Paul Walker had died, tragically. So I was like, I'd heard a lot about the movie. I was like, all right, I got to see it now. I'm like, what is this?
No, I'm with you. Look, I mean, for me, I don't like when movies seem to try to be ironically like fun and cool. It's like, no, I can't stand that.
If there's a movie that's like truly like, it's so bad it's good, like The Room. Like, this filmmaker was really trying to make a good movie, and it failed so spectacularly that it's funny. I hate when they're like, it's just crazy, like everything just blows up and nothing makes sense. If you're trying to do that, to me, it just seems disingenuous.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I'm a fan of B movies because I grew up and there were a lot, when I was watching films in theaters, there's a lot of great, to me, some of the great B movies of all time, The Terminator.
And why are they called B movies, by the way?
Well, because
budgetary.
Yeah, it's a budgetary thing. They're low budget films, and yet despite their low budget, their storytelling exceeds their budget.
So the B's in B movie stands for budget?
Well, no, because you think A-list, and then there's the B list.
Imagine I'm trying to make a Star Wars caliber movie, but I only have a couple $1,000s. The effects aren't going to look sharp.
Yeah.
It's going to look kind of goofy, but I'm still making that movie. I'm not settling for a lesser idea. Like, this is what movie I'm going to make, despite me having no money.
But B movies could be great, and I think James Cameron, there's a lot of great B movie directors. I mean, and James Cameron, I think Terminator was one of the great knockout B movies, and there was a lot of great.
Oh, so Terminator is a B movie. Okay.
The first Terminator absolutely is.
Because then later they get more of a budget, but then there's movies that like are paying homage to B movies, like the new Kong Skull Island. was basically a B movie, even though it had 180 million.
Yeah, well, that's what's happened to all movies now. They're all of these blockbuster, that's the crazy thing.
Would you consider the newest Mortal Kombat a B movie or not? Just out of curiosity.
Oh no, it absolutely is.
Okay.
Although it should have been better than it was. But then again, the first Mortal Kombat isn't. Yeah, I mean, it is.
Same with Kong vs. Godzilla or Godzilla vs. Kong. That was also a B movie that should have been better.
Yes, I agree. I mean, that was the funny thing is now we're getting $200 million, $150 million B movies that should be better than they are. And that's the ironic thing is that if Godzilla vs. Kong costs $15 million, well then you'd be like, okay. But I was so excited for Godzilla vs. Kong, and I looked at it and I'm like, even as a B movie, it doesn't work. I mean, it's got some great scenes, but
I'm not going to divert much on this. But I think what happened was the Godzilla King of Monsters was such a disappointment that they hacked a lot out of that, much like Justice League, the 2017 version. I think they said, okay, guys, we've got Godzilla and Kong fighting. People are going to see it. Make it as short and concise and efficient as possible. Do not do any crazy world building. Nobody wants to see any of that. Didn't work. We're going to make them fight twice, and that'll be it. And while there's disappointment, I have to admit, like, ever since I was little, I asked, like, my dad, like, did Godzilla and King Kong ever meet? And he didn't know. And then I found out
twice. They met twice.
Well, I found out there was this Japanese movie, which was the famous, King Kong vs. Godzilla. But
and King Kong escapes.
Godzilla wasn't in that one though.
No,
that was Japanese. But anyway, like that movie, it's fun, but it didn't have the pomp and circumstance, of like a big budget. So I wanted to see that, and the fight. It was cool to see that. My 8-year-old self was really happy to see that finally occurred.
Oh, I mean that the battle in the water over the aircraft, that was awesome.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I couldn't help but be like, okay, this is what I dreamed of seeing when I was little, and I was like, this is actually happening. So, yeah. And it was also the first movie I saw after the beginning of the pandemic. So there was a special, I gave it a pass to that degree, but all the things you could say about it, like, didn't make sense. They were just ridiculous.
No, I mean, I agree with you. Hey, listen, kids, I'm gonna jump off with you guys, answer some super chats, and bring on some more people.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate both of you. This was a great conversation. I want to thank you both.
Even though I didn't really say much.
No, you said a lot.
Really quiet.
You said a lot. This is good. This is a good conversation. I want to thank you both for being here on this late night, last minute midnighter. I'm going to jump in and do some super chats and see who else is out there. But this is a great conversation. It was good to see you both again. And Zephyr,
good to meet you, Joey.
Oh, it's great to meet you as well. Yeah.
And I think, Zephyr, we're going to have to do a review of the Quantum Spy on the show. I got to bring you on. We got to talk about it. And you can't just talk about how Louis Tan's going to be the dreamy guy playing our main character.
Well, to be very, very fair, I do think as much as I adore the guy, and I do very, very much, I'm not sure how well he could play the guy, because there is a level of work that he could not do as a Eurasian that a fully Chinese American could do, because the character in the book Quantum Spy, Harris Chang, is actually Chinese American, not Eurasian.
Right. It's true. Well, we will talk about that. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
That was a great conversation, you guys. Thank you for doing that. I very much appreciate that, and it's great. It's great to have these guys and girls and people. I'm gonna run through some super chats you guys have sent me. Rod Thunderheart says, "Sir, I wish Raquel Briggs had existed for all of us. No disrespect to her, just wish more of her existed for us at the time." Raquel Briggs, I don't know who that is. Sir, you are absolutely right. No one gets them. Rod, I'm missing something. I looked up Raquel Briggs. Is she the one that went to the University of Alberta? I don't know. Is she on Twitter? Is she una bella problema? I don't know. But I will take your word for it. Our friend Swack Prop says 20 years ago. First of all, Swack Props, as you all know, I mean, he's one of the people that always amazes me. I just want to point out that the latest Swack Props, I haven't even taken this out because it's just so awesome. I just have it sitting next to me. If you're a fan of John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, no one makes a better prop replica of this book. I mean, this looks and feels like a real book. He sent me the second artist's copy of this. This is one of the greatest things I own. You know, it's funny because I think as I'm rearranging the Robservatory, I'm going to have a Swack Props shelf with all the things that he sent me because it's amazing. He sent me just amazing stuff, and I love it. So Swack Prop says, 20 years ago, a colleague saw my mini Starship collection on my desk and told me, don't tell everyone else I'm a Trekkie lest they'll think I'm a loon. By the way, double points for saying loon. I love the word loon. I recently bumped into said colleague and he was eagerly praising Star Trek Discovery. The tables have indeed turned. It is our cross to bear, Cal. What can we do? I don't know. We just have to go with it. Sheriff Carl, my man in the P&W, says, always late to the party. Would fucking love to talk Neptune Theater and KSTW Channel 11 with you sometime. Keep being rad. Hail Seattle. I don't know. Can we say Hail Seattle these days? I guess we can. It's a very different place. Rod Thunderheart goes on with another super chat and says, Rob and friends, can I ask you about your thoughts on an image of an invisible woman? That is the premise of See-Through Love, an invisible woman who turns invisible because she's aroused, yet she can control it when she's angry. Rod Thunderheart goes on to say, Rob, I can give you the base story of my series. If not, I urge you. The first story is 99 cents. Well, Rod, I have to tell you, everyone, I can't listen to people's stories because I make movies, and if somebody sends me a story and someone says, Rob, you stole my idea, we can talk about that. But the idea of an invisible woman, that's intriguing to me. So let me ask you this. I don't know, but your invisible woman, is she like Sue Storm, where she's totally invisible? But I've got one for you. What if, kind of like in something like Paul Verhoeven's The Hollow Man, when you see a body disintegrate, what if you as a guy are making love to a woman? Let's say things are getting hot and heavy, and you might be going down on her, pleasuring her, and it's working out well. What if her outer skin turned invisible so all you could see was all of her internal organs? So you're up close and personal doing some work, but all you could see was all of her internal organs. Would that be a turn on? I think it'd be interesting. What would that be? I don't know. But it would be a very interesting experience. It'd be because we idealize each other. You look at pick your favorite film star. What if you saw your favorite film star as transparent, so you couldn't see their exterior, you couldn't see their face, but you could see their skeleton and their musculature and their eyeballs and their optic nerves? Would they still be attractive to you? What was it? What Cronenberg movie said? I think it was Dead Ringers, when they said people should have beauty contests for the inside of their bodies. What an intriguing idea. I don't know. Benson's asks, Netflix is buying the Roald Dahl estate, big moves, or states that. What Benson's is talking about is that today it was announced that Netflix has bought the entire, from the Roald Dahl estate, all of Roald Dahl's books. And if you're a fan of Roald Dahl's books, that's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, James and the Giant Peach, Danny the Champion of the World. So many. Or I have a collection of his work called Switch Bitch. I guess they own that too. So that's pretty interesting. Sonny Dominguez says, for you to have these chats with youngsters like Joey Z and Zephyr reinforces the positive vibes you contribute to fandom. Could you rewrite Free Enterprise 2 to address gatekeeping and the evolving fandom landscape since the first film? Sonny, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, I've thought about that. I figured it was dead. But yeah, you'd have to rewrite. I mean, Free Enterprise 2 is written to take place 11 years ago, and things have changed. I absolutely would rewrite it. I mean, if you'd have to. But you know, one of the things about Free Enterprise 2, one of the core tenets of the story was what happens when the geeks of Free Enterprise 1 grow up and have kids. And they're different. You know, I think what's most different about society now is when I was watching Star Trek, I was looking outward and I was wondering, what does all this mean? And now everyone's asking themselves, well, how does this mean something to me? And everyone wants it to be, I hate to say it, but about them. And I think that's such a strange thing. I mean, nothing is about me. It is what it is. I mean, the real question is, how does great storytelling affect your life? How does it make you a better person? How do you gain something from it? And it shouldn't necessarily be about you, but it could be. I mean, I don't know. Anthony Gonzalez sends in a tip and says, more so than the entire sequel trilogy, I felt James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy was more so true to a Star Wars film. With the story, the characters, the heart, and certainly some homage to Star Wars while still being its own thing. Beloved merch. Well, Anthony, I would say you're right. I think that especially the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie has a much greater understanding of Star Wars than the Disney sequel trilogy. My big problem with the Disney sequel trilogy is it's not about anything. They're not telling a story. They have story elements that they've put together and everyone like focuses on it, but there's not a real story there. From a classical storytelling standpoint, what is the story? I mean, each movie tells a different story and none of the story points ring true. And it's odd to me. I find that the Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy, and the same with the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. I think Star Trek Into Darkness is one of the worst big budget science fiction movies ever made. Because none of it makes any sense, and I still don't know what it's about. And I own it. I mean, I kind of know what it's about. Like, I could describe the story to you, but I'm like, it's a bunch of, an amalgamation of story beats that none of them make any sense. And not only that, the biggest problem with Star Trek Into Darkness is it fundamentally misunderstands its main character. And doesn't give him his own character at all. So, and I hate that. Joshua M. Quirk sends in a super chat and says, thoughts on Quantum Leap and Doctor Who? Well, first of all, I love Quantum Leap growing up. I think there's an irresistibility to all time travel stories, to go back into the past and observe things that have happened, you know, and look, the reason, here's another thing from a storytelling standpoint. Here's a reason why time travel stories are irresistible and why they've endured. From, I'm not sure how many, from a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. You go all the way back to like Mark Twain or whatever. Why do people love time travel stories? Well, obviously, because all of us wished that we could have gone back and changed something that we've done in our lives. So this is what I mean about great storytelling. Time travel stories are inherently irresistible to human beings. Like dogs or cats, cute animals. We cannot resist a great time travel story. Cannot resist. Why? because we've all regretted something that we've done, or we all wish we could relive a great moment in our lives. We all wish that we could go back to a moment in time and experience it again. I mean, I probably got, if you asked me to list them, I could probably give you 10. I'm not going to do it, but I could give you 10 moments in my life that I'm like, I either could have gone back to or relived. And that's why time travel stories are always irresistible. Now, the question is, how good are those stories going to be? Because ultimately, a time travel story, like a show like the Time Tunnel, Irwin Allen's Time Tunnel, like they would go back and they're like, oh my God, we're on the Titanic. Well, they can't affect the sinking of the Titanic in any way. So the question is how are they going to get off the boat before it sinks? So that becomes a story. But what I love is what I love about a great time travel story is, and to me, the perfect time travel story, one of the most perfectly written movies ever written, is of course Back to the Future. Because in Back to the Future, a character goes back in time and then inadvertently ends up fucking with his own existence in the space-time continuum and has to fix it. Great story. Great use of time travel. Fantastic. Love it. And, you have to be some kind of fuck up to not do a great time travel story. And, yeah. So I love Quantum Leap, but, and then Doctor Who is a time travel series that masquerades as a time travel series, but really it's not. It's a science fiction anthology show. Doctor Who's a Time Lord. Yay, he travels through time. It's fine. That just gives him, but I don't think Doctor Who it's different than Quantum Leap is, because, everywhere the Doctor goes, he's just having another sci-fi adventure, which I love. But Doctor Who, while he travels through time, they're not really time travel stories. They're science fiction action adventure stories. And that's kind of a different thing. Even though you'd be like, well, Rob, Doctor Who's a Time Lord. Yes, he's a Time Lord. But, it's not like Doctor Who is concerning himself or now herself with actual, when they go back in time, it's not like Back to the Future where the travelers, their own existence could be altered in the way it is in Back. They obviously you travel through time and, oh my God, all of existence can be changed. We might never exist. Grandfather paradox up that shit. I understand. But, yeah. Well, anyway, everyone watching this show, let's see who's here. I got Ken. Oh my God, Ken. Ken. What an impressive back. Oh my God. I don't know if you've ever been on this show, Ken. I gotta say, I cannot wait to bring you on the show. We've got Ken Whiskey Trek, and I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen a more impressive background of any YouTuber in the history of this channel. And we also have Ishan Kumar coming on. All I can say is, give me a minute, gentlemen. I'm going to put you both in the show. It's going to take me a second because I'm doing this live on the fly. But this is going to be, I can already tell, a lot of fun. If I, let's see, hang on. Oh, hang on, something is, wait. So, I guess I have to, as I'm doing this, I have to, keep rattling on and talking as I'm trying to get these guys both in the show. So, Shan, and now I'm getting Joey. And this is Ken. And wait, I can't wait to show you all this. This is the greatest background I've ever seen for a Star Trek fan. I don't even know what to say. You're representing Montgomery Scott so well, sir. Let me just say, I'm very impressed. Very, very impressed. And hang on, just give me a minute, guys. I'm telling you, this will be worth the wait. Not, by the way, I don't want to put down Ishan either. I'm probably not God, I know, right? I'm just looking at this. It's fantastic. I know. I'm telling you, I can't wait for everybody to see this. I think they're going to love this. It's going to be fantastic. Although I think we're going to have a lively conversation. I don't know. Call me crazy. We'll see what's going to happen here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls, all of you, however you identify across the 28 known galaxies, please welcome Ken, Whiskey Trek, and Ashan Kumar to the Midnighter. Live long and prosper. First of all, Ken, since you haven't been here before, please tell us, sir, where do you come to us from?
So I'm coming from sunny Western Australia, down under.
Now, are you locked down?
We're lucky on the West Coast. Most of all the lockdowns are over on the East Coast. So over on the West Coast, we're really lucky. COVID isn't really impacting.
So are you like, you're not by? I mean, I lived in Sydney for a year. So to me, the West Coast of Australia is Perth and everywhere else.
Yep, north of Perth.
North of Perth. Okay, good. And Ishan, where are you coming from?
I'm in New Delhi, India.
I knew that, but I wanted you to tell everyone. So, my God, talk about worldwide representation. All right, gentlemen, let me ask you this. Ken, Whiskey Trek, I'm looking for a bottle that's green. But tell me, sir. Oh, there. You got something that's green. I was saving this. So what's on your mind tonight, sir?
Well, I was just watching the channel and about how you were talking about gatekeepers, and I was like, gatekeepers are kind of an interesting concept because you've got the people that interpret a gatekeeper as someone who, this is the way it's got to be. You can't jump out of this little box or whatsoever. And then you got the other people that say, okay, well, gatekeepers can be good. But so it's a very interesting dynamic. And what you were saying about storytellers, the modern day people that are doing these shows and even the books, the comics, exactly have to agree with you 1,000%. They don't have a literary background whatsoever. I'm like you, real young lad reading Asimov and things like that. It's just such a great foundation for basic storytelling, especially in sci-fi. That
by the way, I just got to point out, you just said reading Asimov was just a great foundation for storytelling. Thank you for thank you for saying that.
Yep.
Now, first of all, I gotta ask you. This background is so classy of yours. It's so beautifully done. If you could give us a little bit of insight, since you haven't been on the channel before, what are we looking at?
Yep.
We're looking at an incredible collection of whiskey.
Yep.
Now, how?
So my channel is a Scotch show, so it's called Scotch Down Under. So we just hang out, talk about Scotch, and we pretty much similar to this, where I would do reviews, but then I would open it up to the general public, so anybody then come on, and we just hang around. So it's like a pub. You come in, you have a drink, and we have discussions, and then that actually molded into a bunch of us who are whiskey fans, are die-hard sci-fi fans, are Star Trek fans. So we actually did a sub every fortnight. We get together and we talk about Star Trek.
I just want you to know, I just put you full frame so people can see your entire background. And as I look closer, you've got incredible bottles of whiskey and scotch, but at the same time you have Star Trek figures and so give us a little tour of your
little tour. Okay.
Yeah.
So most of all this is Scotch. So I'm a real Scotch aficionado. So, but there's a lot of Japanese, there's bourbons, there's Irish, there's Taiwanese, there's Welsh, Australian, obviously.
What you're showing me to me is like my pornography. It's incredible.
And then, I've got figurines, I've got the bust, I've been collecting all the Star Trek novels, the graphic novels, I've got all the ships, and then I've got Star Trek models up there, then I've got, obviously, Star Wars, and Lego, so I do Lego, drams and Legos, so I've got Lego as well, so I've got, all the Star Wars Lego as well.
So what I'm looking at this, what might be one of your most expensive bottles of booze that we're looking at right now?
That would be this one here. So this is a 30-year-old Lefroy.
I heard once an author in a book, a guy named Mark Lindquist, said Lefroy was like God pissing in your mouth.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, Lefroy has some great terms like that. It's like kissing a dragon next to an asteroid and weird, wonderful sayings like that. Yeah, Lefroy is medicine, and it's actually still classed as medicine back in the times in in the American when there was no booze and I just had a brain fart. This was still legally able to be sold because it was classified as medicine. So prohibition.
My God. Well, I just had to go full frame. I want to bring you back because we're having a conversation. Shan, what do you think about that collection of booze? Come on, tell me you don't want to drink it all, because I want to drink all of it.
Of course, I want to live there.
I think we all need to get if this channel, if all the imagination connoisseurs we ever get to like travel with impunity, we're going to Ken's house.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have a party. We're gonna do
on the Jack Daniel.
We're gonna do a live stream. We're gonna do also.
Sinatra.
Yes, that's the one I'm looking at.
Yep.
It's
I'm actually going to hang out with some friends.
Yeah.
Yep, Star Trek. I've got Spock right in front of it. Bones over here. Yep.
Sorry, you were saying.
So, Shan, how are things, first of all, in India?
They've improved greatly since the last time we spoke.
Yes.
Yeah, that was right in the middle of the second wave. Since then, a lot more people have been vaccinated. More than half the population has got their first dose of vaccine, which is a lot of people. It's how to put it in? It's 800 million people.
Wow.
So, yeah, more than that. So, I've got doubly vaccinated, so I'm happy about that. And the number of cases per day has reduced in a lot of parts of India. So things are looking brighter for sure.
Now, let me ask you this. Were you able to see movies like Shang-Chi or Fast 9 or Black Widow? Have you seen any of those films?
I've seen Black Widow and Shang-Chi. I saw Shang-Chi in the theater.
How did Shang-Chi go over in India? How people liked it?
I haven't spoken to too many people who watched it, but they had mixed reviews. They had mixed opinions on it. I feel like it wasn't received the way the first three phases of Marvel movies were received in India, where people who had never heard of anyone except for Spider-Man from Marvel just suddenly became fans overnight, and they repeat watch each movie, and they're doing the entire marathon for all three phases with their friends and stuff. And it's been a bit more muted. Shang-Chi, I think, has been more popular because it got a theatrical release than Black Widow, which wasn't released in the theater here. It's only now come to the Disney Hotstar, which is the collaboration that Disney has with an Indian streaming app called Hotstar.
Yeah.
So we get Disney Plus content on that. I watched Black Widow before that because I couldn't resist, so I illegally downloaded it.
Oh, you're part of the problem, Ishan. Come on. You're a bad boy.
I'm sorry to anyone listening.
Oh, man. Now, Ken, let me ask you this. Where you're living north of Perth, are your theaters open? Can you see films? Can you go to the theater?
Yeah, so our theater's been open for a while. I haven't watched Black Widow because of all the reviews. I'm like, I'm the same. Shang-Chi, I'm kind of a mixed bag because I'm like you. I'm a die-hard martial arts fan, martial arts movies. I've been practicing and teaching martial arts most of my life, and that kind of genre is really up my wheelhouse. But after seeing like Az's reviews and things like that, I'm like,
you know what? I put that aside. I love Az. We're going to be streaming later today, but I would check it out because you had Jackie Chan's the first. I'm
gonna show you all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
it's
fun.
I want to put my brain off and watch it.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. It's good. And by the way, Az and I are streaming later today for Fully Articulated episode 20. We're both going to talk about our Jean-Luc Picard First Contact 12-inch action figures.
Rolling over that.
From
did you hear the news? Not to go off subject, but they're bringing out 7 and 9.
Oh yeah, they're doing. Well, I've got even. I have some inside info I'm going to drop today. But yeah, 7 of 9, the Doctor and the holographic Doctor, and they're doing 7 of 9. I'll tell you this. I actually, they're doing 7 of 9 in her maroon outfit, not that silver outfit, which I think is fucking great, because that's the non-cliche 7 of 9. I was happy they're going to do that. So, yes, I mean how great's that going to be? To have that as a 6 scale figure, awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited. But so now let me ask you this: like, October is a murderer's row of movies, beginning with Venom, Let There Be Carnage. We've got Dune coming out. Is Dune already playing in India yet?
No, not yet. 15th
Okay.
October.
Okay, so you got Dune. We got No Time to Die, which I'm dying to see. Halloween Kills. There's so many movies coming out in October. Ken, let me ask you this: are you going to be going to the movies are you going to see the new Bond? You can see Dune. You can see Venom. Any of those interest you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. All those 3. I'm definitely. As soon as they come out, I'm bang on there. Yeah, for sure.
Now, do either one of you have IMAX theaters? I mean, that are close to you? Can you go to? Because to me, I think
down to Perth, it's like 4 hours away. Yes, but here locally, no.
No, because I think that I have to see Dune in an IMAX theater. I have tickets to see No Time to Die in an IMAX theater, but I'm like I can't imagine seeing Dune in a non-IMAX theater. I just can't.
Yeah.
I saw Shang-Chi again. I went because a lot of it was shot in IMAX, so I went and saw it at an IMAX theater this past weekend. I'd already seen it, obviously, but it was like, wow, it's just so entertaining. I thought Shang-Chi was so entertaining. I just had such a good time with it. I mean, will it change the world? No. But to me, it reminded me of all the Chinese martial arts fantasy movies I grew up with. It was like watching a straight-up wuxia movie from 1984. I loved it. And I think one of the things, like, Ken, I would say that, I've listened, like, Az's criticisms are not incorrect, but if you're a fan, like, I think a lot of the time, if you haven't grown up watching those movies, and, like, if you don't know what Quentin Tarantino was borrowing from when he made Kill Bill and Kill Bill Part 2, I think that a lot of people don't necessarily, like, I grew up with those movies, and I didn't know when I went and saw Shang-Chi that it was that. I thought it was something else. And I was like, you'll know from the opening 10 minutes. You'll be like, wait, what? You'll be like, this is incredible. I didn't know this movie was like this. And I think that's what a lot of people, it's all based on what you know and what you like and what you've experienced. And it was
And
good.
after when you did your review, I'm like, oh, this sounds really good. And then I'm watching Gary and Az, and then I'm like, I'm up and.
Well, and I would say that I mean it's a question of I think it really comes down to, like, if you grew up watching Chinese fantasy cinema, you'll like Shang-Chi because you'll get it. You'll be like, oh, that's what they're doing. Now, and I mean, I didn't think that it was, the whole thing about the father-son, and I love Tony Leung, and I'm a huge fan of his, and you'll I think you dig it. I think you dig it. So, Ishan, let me ask you this: no IMAX by you, but are you? Oh, you do have. You have IMAX. Are you going to go see Dune in IMAX?
Absolutely. It looks too grand to be watched on any other format.
Right. Now, how is the theaters in the IMAX theaters? I mean, obviously, India has a monstrous film. Bollywood's bigger than Hollywood, and are the IMAX theaters of good quality? Are they big and loud?
They are, but I'm not sure how. Because I've never been to any other IMAX theater. I don't know if they're as big as they're supposed to be.
Right. Okay. That's good.
Yeah. So,
do you have a favorite IMAX theater?
I think my favorite experience of IMAX was actually not in New Delhi, but in Mumbai, because when The Force Awakens released, my friends and we actually planned a train journey to Mumbai to watch The Force Awakens in IMAX. Yeah.
But
it was huge.
Yeah,
It's not good.
Force Awakens wasn't filmed in IMAX though, whereas Dune
Yeah,
was.
okay, okay.
That's why I'm
So,
thinking Dune. If you go see, you should go to Mumbai and see Dune, dude. See it at that same theater.
right, maybe. Hmm.
Come on, do it.
Good.
Make a video and send it to me. I'll put it on the channel. Do it.
Oh my God,
just take a
that's a
phone
lot of
video. Just
intention.
take videos. I'll even cut them together. Just like here's my journey to go from New Delhi to Mumbai to see Dune in IMAX. How long
That's
does
a lot
it?
of
How
incentive.
what's the train? How long does that take? How long does it take?
The train journey is an overnight journey.
Oh, come on. That'd be so much fun. You guys could get hammered, just get drunk on the train. You know, it'd be so
We can't
funny.
drink on trains in India. We're
What?
not allowed to. Yeah.
What?
we can't.
What? Come
India's
on
a
now.
bit prudish
Well, that
that
means
way.
you have to sneak the booze on the train, which will even be more fun.
Yeah. The booze sneaking happens a lot. It's almost like booze sneaking is legal in India because of how much it's banned everywhere. So it's
I-
almost like an understood thing that people are going to be. What is that?
Oh,
That's
look at
that's
you know what? I have
flask.
that exact same flask. Yes, that's my live long and prosper flask. That's
Hello.
what you got to sneak. Now, Ken, let me ask you this: if you're going to sneak booze anywhere in a flask, there must be some boozes that travel better than others. What would you say? Like, if you're going to take a nice drop with you, something classical, something that has a what would be your favorite booze that you would put in a flask?
Typically, what I usually put in the flask is liqueurs. So, like a Glava, which is a Scotch liqueur. I usually put that in there because I like something that's got a bit of sweetness, bit of depth to it, but it's still got that Scotch flavour. And because you're not really getting the full experience of the Scotch if you're drinking out of a flask. So I'd rather have my good stuff in a nice glass.
I think we just saw your son on the show.
Yeah.
Hello there. Hello
Hang
there.
on, should we let's go full frame on this? Now, who is this young man that we have on the show now in America?
So this is my son. Say hello. Say your name.
Eh.
That's not your name. So this is Samuel.
Samuel,
He's my 8-year-old son.
Samuel, let me ask you a question. Are you a Star Wars or a Star Trek fan?
Are you a Star Wars or a Star Trek fan? Star Wars or Star Trek?
Or Marvel? Or Harry Potter?
Both. Both, he says. He says both.
All right.
You like Batman. You like Batman, don't you? You don't like it when I say I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
All right, boys.
What is your
Okay.
favorite Batman movie?
I don't think he's actually only seen the animated stuff, haven't you? Oh, you've seen the Lego Batman movie.
The Lego Batman movie's awesome. All right, Samuel, good to meet you. Welcome to America, or at least actually to the worldwide audience. Amazing. So, let me ask you this, Ken. So, when you have an 8-year-old son, how do you introduce him to all of this geekiness? Like, what is your plan? Or do you let him discover it on his own?
I'm letting him discover some of the stuff on his own, and obviously he likes hanging out with me when I build the Lego and stuff like that. I'm waiting for him to find his direction, and then once he finds his direction, I'm like, okay, son, now I'll let you really help you explore that direction. I'm looking forward to that.
Now, let me ask you both. Shan, let me ask you a question. So, I'm not
Sure thing.
up on fandom in India, but I know that
Right.
India has lots of film festivals and there's a comic fans, movie fans. India has 1 billion fans. So, what is it like in India? Do you go to conventions? Do you have comic book stores in India? And when you go see a Marvel movie, does everybody go opening night and turn up? What's it like?
I think it's a lot more muted than the situation in Europe and in the Americas, or even in a place like Singapore. I lived in Singapore for 5 years, and I saw the dedication and the fandom in that sense. The way of describing it is a lot richer there than it is in India. In fact, a few months ago, I was actually I did this exercise where I went to boxofficemojo.com and I was looking up how much money each Star Wars movie made in the theaters in India. And consistently, it was in the last four in Asia Pacific. India was. And I found that really like antithetical to the population that we have.
Well,
You know,
maybe, the Indians, there's no singing and dancing in Star Wars. There's no
yeah.
romance, you
But there's
know?
the Ewok dance.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I have to, and there's no beautiful, I mean, I have to say, some of the Indian women I've seen in your movies are some of the most beautiful women
Right.
I've ever seen in my life. So,
I agree. I would agree.
yeah, I mean, I don't, Star Wars is not a universe full of beautiful girls. Unless you like, I mean, if you like Twi'leks or whatever, that's cool, or those two girls in the cantina at in Mos Eisley in Star Wars. I'd like them to take me home. But
Rhea and Seni Tonica, the Tonica sisters.
yeah, that's right. They can take me and do whatever they want to me. Just saying. I mean, So, but no. So, why do you think that is? Why do you think that? I mean, I'm joking, of course, but maybe there's something
Yeah.
to that. I mean, Bollywood cinema is different than Western cinema.
So if we're
Why
talking
is
about
Star Wars not
fandom,
big?
well, I guess the biggest fandom in India in cinema is Salman Khan. I'm sure you've heard that name,
Oh yeah,
right? And like it's crazy. He his movies don't have to have any kind of story. They just have to have him beating people up, and you know, and wooing the right hot women, and those movies will do well. Um, they just need the action, and they associate Salman Khan with all of that. And for years now, his movies have been doing really well because of just that. So maybe you could say that the larger Indian audience is looking for, mostly that
music and
in a
hot
movie.
girls and beating the hell out of the bad guys.
And yeah, and action, just like mindless action. The Fast and Furious movies do really well in India, by the way.
Yeah, of course, which is good. I mean, all right.
Yeah,
Now, all right,
yeah.
Ken. Let me ask you this: north of Perth, Western Australia. Do you have conventions out there? Do people dress up? There's a cosplay. Are there comic book stores?
Yep. So down in Perth, usually the convention. So yeah, I've met Robert Riley, Duncan McNeil, William Shatner, Tuvok, Jim Ross. So yeah, quite often, obviously because of the beer bug that is definitely dried up, but there
Right.
is convention here, and yeah, absolutely love going there, getting dressed up, meeting fans, hanging out.
Have you ever had a celebrity sign one of your bottles of booze?
No, that's something I've never done. Obviously, I've got the
Come on, mate.
typical, but not on a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that'd be kind of cool. You
You could
know,
have
That would be very cool.
Daniel Craig signing a bottle of martini, right?
Oh, there
that's
you
what
go.
you need. I mean, when I lived in Sydney, I drank a lot of Cooper's. I was a big fan of Cooper's beer and a lot of Penfolds wine.
Yeah, all good stuff. Yep.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, but I love Cooper's. The first time though, I don't know if I'll tell you the story. The first time I ever went to Australia was when I was working on the Lord of the Rings special features, and I was going to interview cinematographer Andrew Lesney and the Foley guys, and the guys who do all the sound effects, and they do them live. And they had really thick Australian accents, and I'd never been to Australia before, so I was with them all day long, and they're working. They're like, mate, we're gonna get a slab of Bay, and I'm like, what? We're gonna get a slab of Bay, and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell you just said. I have no idea what you just said.
Yeah, this Sci-Fi, we'll go down the bottle, we'll get a slob of BV, and we'll go to the boozer, and we'll get
Yeah,
some-
that was it. And I didn't know what a slab was, nor did I know what VB was. Well, I soon found out. See, in America, we have like 6-packs or half racks, which are 12, or like a rack of beer, which are 24. A slab is 24, 24 beers. And I didn't know that VB stood for Victoria Bitter, which is not, to be fair, not one of your best beers. And I mean, I think VB on tap is better than VB in bottles. Yeah, and but let me just tell you, I watched two guys. They gave me like 4. I had 4 beers, and the 2 guys, they drank 10 VBs between them, and I had so much fun with them. It was fantastic, and it was very funny because then we went to a bar after we drank all this booze, and it had a jukebox, and I had never heard of the band Cold Chisel. Didn't know what Cold Chisel was. Now, I knew who Jimmy Barnes was because, you know, he was on the soundtrack for the Lost Boys, and he'd sung with In Excess, but I'd never heard of Cold Chisel, man. And these guys, we were already a little drunk, and they went and put Cold Chisel on the jukebox, and this would never happen in America. I swear to God, everybody in the bar that we were in starts singing this song. I couldn't even tell you which Cold Chisel song it was, but I was just sitting there, and I'm like, how drunk am I? I've only had 4 VBs. I haven't had my whiskey yet, and the whole bar, and the 2 guys I was with were, of course, singing the loudest. But I have to say, that was my first day in Australia, and I'm like, this is the greatest country in the world. And indeed, no offense, Ishan, no offense. I'm sure I've never been to India. I'm coming, though. I'm coming. But I have to tell you, for this moment, I had not seen a huntsman spider flying through the air yet, though. That made me never want to go back.
Fly, but anyway.
But I mean, they don't really fly. They float. They can float on their, and I just never want to see that again. Never, ever, ever. But in a way, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool.
We have some interesting creatures in Australia, that's for sure.
Yes, and they're pure.
Oh, yeah.
There's a purity to your creatures. They'll kill you, and they don't care, which is great. So now let me ask you.
Think, like,
oh, go ahead,
sorry.
John.
No,
go ahead.
Just about the creatures. One of my childhood heroes on TV was Steve Irwin, and I used to love watching his shows. I used to love watching Crocodile Hunter, and I learned so much about crocodiles and tiger snakes and scorpions and all that from his shows. It was awesome. And sharks. You guys have great white sharks as well, right?
That actually kill people. Like every month, there's a shark attack somewhere in Australia. It's great. It's fantastic.
Or someone getting a little nibble.
Hey, man, sharks got to eat.
That's right. You want to go in their feeding ground?
Yeah, if you're going to go in the ocean, you can't get mad when they have to have a little bite to eat.
Have a little nibble. Yeah.
But no, I one of the best years of my life was my year I spent in Sydney, working at Superman. Sydney and Tamworth. I was in Tamworth, Australia's country music capital, for about 3 weeks, and even that was great.
Country capital for sure.
Yeah, I loved it. So let me ask you both: gatekeeping, fandom. What do you guys think? Do you think that? I think all fans can coexist, but Ken, let me ask you. I think if you make people drink enough whiskey, everybody will be friends. But what do you think? What do you think about the state of fandom now? With the internet, are people too angry or what?
Like Joe said, everyone is in their own little sandboxes. They're in their own little team. There's so much aggression. No conscious actual thought of what people's different expressions could be, and everyone's in their box and getting a lot of angry and offense and stuff. Like, I'm with you. I hate post-2009 Star Trek. Can't stand it with a passion. But if someone does like it, I want to listen to why they like it, what they appreciate about it. And, I don't just completely dismiss them and all that kind of thing. But a lot of people just will dismiss them and say, no, you're wrong, and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's in everything. It's in politics. It's in all this. We're just so divisive, and why can't we just be like Star Trek, inclusive, and without throwing it down your throat and saying, yeah, you do this and do that. Yeah.
I mean, I want great stories. That's what I want. What do you think,
Exactly.
Ashan? Can fans just get along? Can we be friends?
In my experience, well, in the Indian context, obviously there hasn't been too much gatekeeping. But overall, yes, of course, on the internet, I see what's happening. And I think there's a fine line between gatekeeping, between like watching out. Because, okay, I look at every fandom as a tribe in a way, and I think of fandom as uh, something more than just having read something once, watched something once, or and then just forgotten about it. I feel like fans unite when they've taken something away from what they've watched or heard or read, and they've experienced something out of it, and they want to share that experience with each other. So I think we have to, of course, hear everyone's opinion out. And of course, it gets toxic when you start denigrating people for uh, their opinions and stuff like that. But I also feel like it's okay to kind of understand who is a fan and who is not a fan, and
Yeah.
not be dismissive of them, but just say, okay, in the words of Yoda, much to learn you still have. Uh, you know, and I don't. I'm not trying to sound like I'm putting people down for not knowing, uh, but that distinction has to. I think uh, people have to be aware of that distinction. I think.
I agree with you, because to be a fan is to put in the work. You can't
Yeah.
just
Exactly.
watch an episode of a show and say, I like that. I mean, you could say
Yeah.
that's good, but I think, fans of some, and once again, people are going to accuse me of gatekeeping. I do think that there is work involved. Like, if you're a fan of a show, you might have watched it 3 or 4 times all the way through, and you can talk about it eloquently, like you know enough about the show that it has an inner life for you. Like, you don't just watch a show and go, "Wow, I like that." You're walking down the street to the corner store, or you're going to a restaurant for dinner, and really you're thinking about last night's episode of your favorite show that you watched, and it's something that it means something
Yeah.
to you, and you think about it, and it informs your life. And
Yes.
I think that's the problem that we have now, like this whole idea of gatekeeping, and the article I was reading from, well, you're a fake fan. I think most people, when they're a fan of something, it informs their life. Like, they see it as a reflection of their worldview or what they believe in, and the characters mean something to them, like beyond just a TV show. It takes on a life of its own. It's a personal mythology. It's your personal politics. It's what you believe in. And so, when someone comes on and says, "Well, I love that show. I'm a big fan of that show," and you're like, "Yeah, but are you? Like, are you?" And it's. Oh, go ahead. I love it. Sean froze. I look at that moment. He froze in the perfect moment. That was fantastic. Sean, I don't know why you froze then. Come back if you can. Now, let me ask you, Ken, what do you think? Is there such a thing as fake fans?
Well, it's kind of interesting concept because, like Joe was saying before, with Batman, people that have never written the comics or read the comics, sorry, and they've only seen the movies. They've never seen the original 66 series or the animations.
Sure.
They're kind of a different fan because that's the only concept they know of that character or that story, that universe. So they're a different kind of fan than someone that's been since day dot, like you and me, who have since day dot with Star Trek and gone all the way through and collected, every book, every novel, every comic,
Right.
every encyclopedia, every little piece. We're die-hard fans that are completely enveloped in the whole universe. We're not someone that's in the one segment of the universe. So I think they're all different kinds of fans, but
Yes.
and whether you're a gatekeeper in your specific genre of that fandom, we all have a bit to contribute. But fundamentally, we've reiterated a few times, where's the storytelling? There is no good stories. It's all whash, bangs, flash in your face, pan in the moment onto the next thing, ram down your throat. No cognitive thought in the process of what you just watched. Anything is just bleh, spewed out in your face, and then you go on to the next thing.
Well, look, that's my problem with especially modern Star Trek. I'm like, come on, guys. Have you put even an ounce of thought in the world building here? You know, Star Trek 09 and Star Trek Into Darkness, I can't even get through watching those movies, even when I first saw them, because they were so absurd. There were so many things in them. People are like, wow, Rob, why do you care? I'm like, well, because I don't believe them. You know, I want to believe.
It's not real.
It's not real. It's so funny. People, what do you mean it's not real? I'm like, I cannot believe the actual films themselves. When you show me that the Starship Enterprise with its warp nacelles was built on a planet instead of in orbit, I can't believe it, because the whole design of the Enterprise is based on the idea that it was assembled in orbit. The components were built on Earth and then sent into orbit because it's not meant to function in the gravity well of a planet. And when you're going to show me the Enterprise underwater in the ocean, who's that guy? Girl guy?
He's a guy. That's Forrest.
Forrest? Hello, Forrest. And who is behind you now?
That's my missus.
Hello, Mrs. Would you like to come on this show? You're talking to Americans worldwide. Come on now.
That's right. She comes on Trek as well. She's a Star Trek fan and everything.
Well, now let me ask you this: how did you meet your missus, and how did you explain to her that you're a diehard Star Trek fan?
Well, when I first moved up here for work, I managed a cinema, and I was working at the cinema, and she was actually working at the cinema as well, and then she helped to manage the cinema and was a projectionist before it switched over to digital. So
wow,
yeah, it's that in common, and then we both like a bit of Trek and all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah,
you guys met at the movies. I can't even think of something more romantic than that.
Yep.
Okay, so what was the first movie you guys ever saw together?
Oh, that's a good question. Hey, Carly, what was the first movie we saw together at the cinema?
How about with me? Was I there?
The first movie we saw together at the cinema. So it would have been a movie we would have test previewed, because that was obviously the advantage of working in the cinema in the days of film. Yeah, hold on a second. So that was always the advantage of working at the cinema. You'd make the film, being a projectionist, and then you'd have to do a test screening. So if it was, new release of a Star Wars or a Star Trek movie or something like that, of course you'd preview that movie at midnight that night to test the movie to make sure it was kosher before you showed it to the public. So it would have been something like that. Could have been Lord of the Rings or anything. I can't remember now.
Wow, how cool would that be?
Yeah. So all the things. Next question. It could have been a Bond, Harry Potter. It could have been anything.
That's fantastic.
So many movies. Yeah.
So
and even the days of the digital. Yeah. Go ahead.
So how many kids do you guys have? Just Samuel?
Just the one. Yeah, just Samuel.
That's good. So have you been indoctrinating Samuel in the ways of the Force and showing him all the great movies and giving him a film education, the education he needs?
So you've seen a few things. We haven't given him too much because obviously
he's young.
He likes to watch stuff. Yeah, he's young, but he does like his science stuff and space stuff. So I built the Lego space station and the shuttle, and I bought him one for his birthday, and so he's built his own space shuttle and space station, and he built the rocket, Saturn V equivalent of the rocket. So. Oh,
really? You have the Saturn V?
Yeah, I've got the Saturn V right up there.
Oh man, I can't see that. I can see it on its side. Yes, I can see it.
Yeah. You can see the front.
Yeah. Man, I'm a huge fan of the Saturn V.
Oh, that's a beautiful Lego set. That's a great one. You can break all the sections up. It's
Yeah, and the
absolutely
LEM
crazy.
too, the Lunar Excursion module that landed. That
Yeah.
Lego set's really nice too.
Yep, I'm building that one soon, and I've done the ISS, the space shuttle with the Hubble. That thing's absolutely stunning.
Amazing.
And there's actually some Star Trek Lego coming out. Well, it's not exactly Lego. It's a German
Yeah, it's
company
that other.
Yeah.
I ordered the Playmobil. Actually, a viewer so crazy.
Saw that episode.
Did you see that? A viewer bought me and Az each one,
Mm-hmm.
and
Can't wait.
mine is supposed to arrive. In a day. Today was the day it was supposed to come, but I don't think it's going to be here today. But Az and I are streaming. We're doing our fully articulated at noon Pacific time today.
Nice. When
And
are
we
you
both-
getting your King Tut?
Oh, you know about the King Tut? I don't know.
Yeah, I've ordered the Osiris because one of my personas is Osiris. That's what when I first got on the internet. That was my alias. So I had to get the Osiris in the green skin.
Oh yeah. So I don't know. I've paid it off. I got it from Toys Wonderland. It's paid off. I don't know when it's going to show up. I haven't paid shipping. I don't know if it's out yet. And I did order Ramses. I love all of those
I want
Egyptian.
all them. They're brilliant. Yeah,
They're
I love them.
so cool. The one I ordered when I was streaming with Justin, behind me I've got Maximus, Russell Crowe from Gladiator, right behind me here.
Yeah.
And they just announced that they're making Commodus. They're making Joaquin Phoenix, the same company, and it's
Nice.
awesome. And I'm like, yeah, I needed to get that, but I realized you're full screen now. I'm back. We lost Ishan, I guess. Oh, Ishan's back. There he is.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, great. Sorry, guys, I had a power cut.
No, it was awesome watching you be like, "Hey, how's it going?" No, but so Ken and I were just geeking out over certain, like there's a line of Egyptian figures, Anubis, Osiris. They just released they just announced on Toys Wonderland. I want to say Ramses. Ramses? Yeah, Ramses is the new one.
Oh,
Wow.
Ra.
Is it Ra that they did?
Oh,
No, I think
Yep,
it's just.
so that's Ra. They've got Basset. They've got Horus, Osiris, Anubis.
Do you have any of those? Do you already have them?
No, I've only ordered them. I haven't.
Yeah,
got them yet,
but is it Ramses? Ramses, they just dropped him in the last day or two.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. He's more of a human, but yeah, Bast, all that. I got to get them all. I've only ordered, but they look
Yeah, me
so.
too.
I mean, and the thing is, the problem is the different colors. I'm like, okay, so I got the white King Tut.
Yep.
But I'm like, I kind of like some of the other ones in black, or I just can't decide. But does that mean I now have to get all of them in white? Like
That's a good point.
like Bast, I want to get the cat god in black because it seems like
Yes.
that's the way to go.
Well,
but-
that's why I had to get a
I
Osiris
think
in green.
Sekhmet would be
because,
the one
you
to
know,
get in black.
The which one?
Sorry. Sekhmet.
Oh, Sekhmet, yeah.
I mean, it's the action figure thing is getting out of control. It's just it's all too good, too good. I have to work harder.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, I gotta.
Have you?
Between the booze, I mean, some booze probably costs a lot more than action figures does, depending on what you get.
Yeah. But it depends on which action figure you're getting and which bowl of booze you're getting, I suppose.
Yeah,
But they're both expensive.
yeah, they're both, but fun to have. At least with booze, you can drink it.
That's right.
Action
That's what
figures.
we do
One
on
day
the-
I'm gonna die, and someone's gonna be like, "What is all this crap? Why does he have all these figures?" Oh my God. What are you gonna do?
For enjoyment. That's
I know. Like, while you're here, why not? Why can't I enjoy? Like, I was just talking about not Hot Toys, but I got the Cyclops figure, the Hot Toys Cyclops, and
wow, this is cool.
because Justin was all about, and he's got his piece. He has different pieces, but now he's got his optic blast. But this is the Jim Lee X-Men. I love the X-Men, and this figure's pretty good. I mean, the Sideshow is making these, and I'm like, well, I guess I have to get all these now. So, okay. Why do I have to do that? I don't know. Is anyone making me do it? No. But it's like, no, I have to have them, especially because they've all got the 80s Jim Lee or early 90s X-Men 1 when they switched over. I mean, I like the animated. I mean, I like this. I like this figure. It's good. And they've got Gambit and Wolverine coming, so, you know, one more thing to collect. Well, gentlemen, listen, I must go to bed. I have to go. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here. I want to thank you both all the way from Western Australia, north of Perth. And Ishan, you are in India. You are in New Delhi. You've been here before. It's good to see you again. I'm glad things are better in India than they were the last time. And Ken, we hadn't met you before, but thanks for giving us insight into your family and showing us your amazing collection. I have to say, it's your background is.
You, Ken, man.
Oh, it's quite impressive. Good to see you again, Ishan. And Ken, you are certainly welcome on the channel anytime. I'm going to do these more. I used to do, for a while, I was doing the Midnighter like 4 nights a week, but I just couldn't. I had too much work to do. But now, doing it once a week on Wednesdays is great. So I want to thank you. By the way, Checkers the Inventor, Joel, who was here, says, thanks for the chat, Rob. Sorry if I talk too much. I don't get to talk with astute imagination connoisseurs such as yourselves much. Joey, you're welcome on the show anytime you want. I thought our conversation was great. You did not talk too much.
Yeah.
Especially because when you agree with me, I'm like, talk as long as you want. So, there you go. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you both for being here. I'm going to end episode, what is this, 33 of The Midnighter. But thank you. I mean, I can't believe north of Perth in Western Australia and India. Actually, you guys are close together. I mean, really, you're on one side of the world, and we're on the other side of the world. Yeah, it's.
I think it's a 5-hour flight. No, it's an 8-hour flight or something.
Oh, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, let's go through Singapore, pop up to India. Yeah, about that.
Yeah, but you know, you could get to India in 3 or 4. You know, it's like flying to Seattle. I mean, obviously, India is a big place, but still, you're on the other side of the international date line. It's all good. But I want to thank you both for being here, and thanks for being a part of the Midnighter. It was great to talk to you both. I'm glad both of you are safe and happy, and it's getting better. And I can't wait to hear what you think of No Time to Die and Dune and Venom.
Yeah,
because I'm very excited. I think they all three look good to me. So
yeah, I'm gonna watch them.
And I'm a huge Bond fan, so I've been waiting for this damn movie for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's a really interesting interview with Cary Fukunaga, the director of No Time to Die, in the Hollywood Reporter. It's online. You should check it out. It made me even more excited for the movie after hearing what he said. So can't wait. Well, gentlemen, thank you both for being here, and I wish you both a fond farewell. And as and I would say, and so would number 6, be seeing you. And live long and prosper. Well, everyone, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this. I'm going to bring an end to the Midnighter episode 33. It was good to be back with all of you. I want to thank everyone for the super chats. I don't know if any of my moderators were here. I don't think they were. They didn't know I was going to do this. I hope everybody was polite and kind in the chat. But thank you very much for being here. And thank you for supporting the channel via super chats and tips. And I want to thank everyone for being an imagination connoisseur. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to everyone, by the way, I will be back at noon with As Heel versus Babyface for another episode, the 20th episode of Fully Articulated, where we're going to talk about Exo 6's premium Star Trek line. Both Az and I have received Picard. We'll show Picard on the channel and talk about action figures. And on that note, have a better night, a better morning, a better day, wherever you are. Just have a better one. And I do mean that sincerely.